The child was happy, until it realized that the gods don't love everyone equally. Suffering, hardships, pain, none of these are distributed fairly. While some always find shelter in the light, some are destined to rot in the darkness. When light reaches them, it will be in the form of scorching flames that tear through their muscle and bone. When the fire dies out, you'll wish it back as the freezing cold starts devouring you. You fight through it all, sacrificing body, mind, spirit, just in the hopes of surviving another day. Any gift you receive will turn out to be laced with poison. Any affection spiked with metal hooks just waiting to dig into your skin. The gods hate you. You will never be happy. But you knew that too, didn't you, Aseph? The Villain's Savior is probably one of the first stories I read from beginning to end. It must have been around 5 years ago, just when it concluded. It's not really one of the most well-known stories, nor is it entirely invisible. It's not discussed super often, but people do bring it up once in a while. For this one, arguments don't get as heated as for Abandoned Empress or Who Made Me a Princess, for example. Still, it's one of these works that is pretty hit or miss for a lot of readers. People either dropped this pretty early, or they loved it. For once, not because of some type of giant controversy about how toxic a central male character might be. In fact, most people say they adore Aseph, and for a good reason. Aseph is one of the best written male leads that does not turn into a cookie-cutter cold Duke of the North. No one comes quite close to him, not across the hundreds of stories I touched. Why is that? I think it's because Aseph feels like a believable villain. We start out the series seeing all the abuse he went through. The scars left from that treatment depict his character sincerely. He's not just inexplicably rude to everyone or forgets his trauma within the first 20 chapters. The story does not shy away from making him do bad things that earned him the titular villain label, but Aseph never fully steps over the line where you believe he is beyond redemption. He seems like a good partner for our female lead and has a sincere chance to get better, now that the pain of the past has withdrawn and given him room to develop. That sounds interesting, no? Then why would a lot of people drop this work relatively early? For many, Aseph wasn't the issue. It was the female lead. Elzay, in contrast to Aseph, isn't a standout main character. You do believe she loves him with all of her heart, but other than that, she is pretty nondescript. She's very passive too. The only trait that will stand out is her tendency to cry at the slightest inconvenience. And believe me, you will notice, because she does it a lot. A lot. But I don't want to spoil any more than that. The Villain Saber was adapted by Yeon Seul, who also worked on Adelia, Feathers of the Flower and the Hidden Saintess. The artist for the story was Zetson, who also did the art for To My Rude Darling with Multiple Personalities. The original novel of the same name was written by Myoung Rang, who also wrote the novel for Aidin. Before we start, I'd like to put a special emphasis on the content warnings for this work. During the first few chapters, the story goes through O'Malley's traumatic background story in detail, and he truly went through a lot. If you are uncomfortable with any of these, feel free to skip to the timestamp on screen to jump past the worst half of his background story. Though, of course, the rest of the manhwa will also reference these events. The child was happy. He had a stern but honest father and a loving mother. The happiness lasted until the day their patron sold their mother to a high-ranking noble. The house turned dark and grim with the stench of alcohol and accusing words. His eyes looked just like that horse, "You're probably not even my child," and fists and bruises. The child endured all of them alone. He held on as darkness threatened to swallow him. And one day, it felt like he was rewarded. The door opened and his mother returned, with a blinding light. His father, too, fell into her arms and thanked her for returning. Now things could go back to how they were before. The child remembered standing next to his mother, the sun shining upon them, resting his hand on her rounded stomach as she offered him a reassuring smile. He would have a sibling soon, but the light dimmed as the stench of alcohol returned. His father, convinced his wife was carrying another man's child, vented his anger on her. The child tried to defend her, but he was merely pushed away and locked out, alone in total darkness. When he found his mother again, she didn't reply. Bloody and bruised, she lay on the bed. The child ran to get the medicine. With no coin to spare, he stole it and ran. Even when he tripped and the owner of that stall caught him, he kept his fists clenched around the tiny rays of hope he had found. Bruised, he rushed through the dark forest, clinging to the last bit of hope. What destroyed his hope wasn't the darkness he feared so much. It was the gruesome light, the raging flames that devoured the house he had grown up in. The child, all alone now, fell to his knees. His name was Aseph, and he had survived so much pain at just 5 years old. But for him, this life would only hold more pain. Aseph fought to survive in the dark. He bowed to anyone who would mock him, did any work he could find just to earn enough to live another day. He offered his pretty face and body more than once, having no other choice. And one day, during a freezing winter, he met her, a noble lady, Gracia Rendell, a marchioness who held the sole power over her household ever since her husband's death. She took Aseph in as her son, giving him a noble name, expensive clothes, and a warm home. However, she too expected something in return. Lady Rendell didn't love him like a mother. She desired his body, his face, and his pain. Lady Rendell happened to be a sadist, whipping and burning Aseph for fun, all while claiming she loved him and forcing him to say the same in return. Aseph went through all of this, but still he wanted to live. Still he longed for love. But finally, he learned to depend only on himself. His hands found his stepmother's throat as he committed his first murder, and he agreed with her on one matter. The desperate fight for someone's life in the last moments was truly beautiful. Aseph felt no guilt, and so, the boy longing for love had become a villain. Tears drip onto the page of a book. Our female lead can't keep herself from crying. She picked up this book a year ago, by pure coincidence. The Seal of God was its name. She started reading it out of curiosity, but then the nightmare started. For an entire year, she kept dreaming about Aseph, who was tortured and screamed in pain. Aseph, who was longingly standing before the mansion of the woman he loved, calling out to Alyssa, only to be ignored. Our female lead is in so much pain just imagining it. But no matter how much she pities Aseph, her love cannot reach him, because he is just a character in a book, a villain, an obstacle to the main character's love. Someone who longed for love but had become so cold that he couldn't trust anyone. Our female lead put the book away in an attempt to stop thinking about him, but her nightmares kept going. That's why she avoided reading about Aseph for an entire year. Maybe her mistake was giving in and continuing to read. A beautiful brown-haired lady with pink eyes turns to Aseph, who begs her to stop running away, but she says she cannot be the person to love him, because she is Alchester's partner. She grabs the hand of the man next to her. The red symbols on the hands glow slightly. A seal of God, announcing them as fated partners, and announcing Aseph as the loser, because the one person he loved was someone else's. Aseph, consumed by jealousy and despair, sold his soul to gain a fake crest, transforming into a warped version of himself. He was struck down by Alcester, his soul forsaken to the demons. Alcester became the new emperor of the nation, being celebrated for killing that demon that had attacked them. With his lover by his side, he was beloved by everyone. Our female lead can't grasp such a cruel ending. She starts crying as she cradles the book. She imagines she was by Aseph's side. She'd love him, she swears. A green glow forms a symbol over her chest. The child has made the same choice. Hopefully, she will succeed this time. She falls asleep and awakes in a different body, one that has a familiar shade of brown hair but green eyes. She's Elzay, the older twin sister of the heroine, Alyssa. Someone who took on a kind of motherly role for her spoiled sister ever since their mother died early. Only that Alyssa didn't have a twin sister in the novel. Alyssa promptly storms in and throws herself onto her sister's bed. She wants to sleep a bit more, so she insists on cuddling. Elzay remembers living an entire life in this world as this woman's sister, but her old life is also still vivid to her. As they sleep next to each other, Alyssa is woken up by a strange green glow. The seal of God has formed on Elzay's body, a sign that she is fated to fall for a person with a matching crest. This is deemed a great blessing. Alyssa is overjoyed. Their father, Eisen, is also happy. Elzay can't quite be joyful though. Not when she knows that the man who's such a loving father to her and Alyssa is the very person who burned down Aseph's home. She begs him not to publicly reveal the existence of her seal, fearing what Aseph might think. Instead, she asks him to secretly check if the one carrying the other half of her seal is her beloved Marcus Aseph Randall, if she is his fated soulmate. But that would be too easy, wouldn't it? Aseph doesn't have a crest, meaning that Elzay is fated to love someone else, no matter how much she cherishes him. It seems fate won't allow her to be by his side, no matter how her father tries to console her, saying that she will come to love her true partner. No matter how certain Alyssa is, as she promises that they will find her soulmate during the courtesse, Elzay is devastated. So devastated that she has a high fever. She decides that she must keep Aseph and Alyssa from meeting during the courtesse. She writes a letter to Cesare Tirossi, a daughter of a count who admired Aseph in the novel. Perhaps she could become his partner. It's pitiful, but right now Elzay can't think of anything else. This is when Shea, her maid, suggests she should go out. Lovingly, of course. Elzay enjoys the soft breeze outside. She sits on a swing seat and just closes her eyes for a moment when a familiar man appears. Aseph meets her gaze and smiles. He apologizes for intruding. He only wished to be alone for a moment because he didn't intend to disturb anyone. But the garden is so beautiful. Would she mind it if he stayed for a moment? Aseph takes a seat next to her. Elzay can't help but stare at him. It's truly Aseph with his blue eyes and his mole. He's alive. Almost instinctively she calls out his name. Aseph flinches. He's surprised she recognizes him. He reaches out and gently takes her hand to press a kiss onto her knuckles. And Elzay is so touched to hear him utter her name that she cries. Again. Aseph gets super confused because what the fuck did he do wrong, and asks if she is sick. She tries to run away and he stops her. He attempts to console her when her seal starts glowing, just for a moment. Then the pain follows and makes Elzay double over. And Aseph looks at her. Lady Elzay, by any chance, do you have a seal? Elzay lies, claiming that it was merely holy light. She was healed recently and these were the remains of that magic. Aseph seems to buy it and returns to smiling. He gently holds Elzay's fingers and says that his mother had a weak heart as well. That was why he rubbed her hands often like this. That is a lie. And thinking about it, Aseph also claimed that this garden was pretty, but he doesn't like flowers. Could it be that he is trying to make a good impression on Elzay? Just as she thinks that, he smiles at her. He says her hands are quite lovely. She should leave, she thinks, before she gets used to him even more. But as she steps away, Aseph begs her not to go. He looks so pitiful. Aseph returns home. A servant with reddish-brown hair follows him, saying that he was out alone at night. Everyone was worried. Elmore, you're giving me a headache. Stop rambling. I want to be alone. Do you know what that means? Don't bother me with anything. Aseph's tone is so cold. Completely different from what he pretended to be in front of Elzay a moment ago. He locks himself into his room and gets frustrated, thinking back to their meeting. He doesn't like Elzay. She called out his name first, only to act like she'd rather be anywhere else after. He claimed that he would be sad if she ran away, while actually thinking that she was being arrogant. Really, she's just a tool for him to gain a higher status. She's fully replaceable. For some reason, I get this warm feeling like I've known you for a long time, he said to her. And he actually thought that he could break her wrist and neck if he wanted to. But he didn't. He let go of Elzay when she said his grasp was hurting. When he apologized, said that her hands just resembled his mother's and that he got distracted for a moment. He begged her not to run away, asked why she dislikes him, and Elzay forced herself to meet his gaze. "I don't hate you. In fact, I think you're a good person, Aseph." She said that and cried again. This is chapter 7, mind you, and the female lead already cried 6 times. Listen, I'm a sensitive girl, I get being touched at the slightest inconvenience. I've cried at animal documentaries. This is just plain weird. But luckily, our male lead is easy because he immediately folds as she wipes her tears. He offers her his coat. Did he care about her back then? Maybe he did. As I said, she'd return the coat, so he has an excuse to see her again. Like in the present, Aseph gets high on some pipe in his room, all to combat the nightmares he keeps having. Elzay sits in her home, hugging the coat he left behind. She knows everything he told her today was a lie, but she finds herself happy anyway. But she shouldn't see him again, should she? She'll only start hoping for something she can't have. Aseph chokes his adoptive mother, the woman who tortured him for so long. Her eyes look like she is cursing him. He stabs her corpse a few more times, promising to spread her remains along with those of her servants. He laughs. Elzay wakes up from a dream with a loud shriek. She just remembered. Today marks the 4th anniversary of that woman's death. It's also the day Aseph starts murdering people. She darts out of her room, caught by her maid, who asks what's going on. She says she has to go to the Randall mansion now. Shea worries but loads her into the carriage and races her to her destination in the middle of the night. She jump scares poor Elmore, who says she can't storm in like that. He's right, but Shea stops him in his tracks and reminds him not to put his dirty hands on a lady. Elzay storms into Aseph's room, however she found it, and immediately coughs from the smoke filling her lungs. Aseph also hurls a vase at her, telling Elmore to get out if he doesn't want to be killed. He only changes his tone when he finds Elzay instead of his servant. He asks why she's here. Elzay stammers out that she wanted to return the coat and promptly faints, but not without firing a weapon that would probably one-shot the average love interest by tugging at his sleeve and begging him to stay with her. Aseph is very confused because she suddenly says something this intimate but ends up picking her up. She whimpers again. "No, Aseph, please don't go outside. Stay here." Tears run down her cheeks. At least she is consistent. Aseph puts her on his bed and leaves to open the window. Elzay whines again, holding onto his sleeve so that he won't leave her. Aseph explains he has to get rid of the drug currently in the room because it could make her addicted if she breathes it in. Elzay keeps begging him to stay. Outside the room, Elmore and Shea argue. Elmore says it's rude for a lady to barge in like this. Shea agrees and says it's in his best interest to keep quiet about this too, for her lady's sake. She cracks her knuckles. Elmore quickly corrects her. He isn't mad. He is worried about Elzay. He knows how his master gets when he smokes the entire night. Shea gets scared and wants to storm in. Just then, Aseph calls for Elmore. They enter and find Elzay lying on the bed, still holding Aseph's arm. Shea wants to rush in, but Aseph stops her with a glare. He hands her an envelope to bring back to the Tiazo mansion. No one will hear about this incident today, but Elmore should get a doctor for Elzay. Nothing really went well during this plan. It was a giant mess all around. One Aseph has to clean up now, but at least he wasn't alone. Because lost in the smoke, bad memories come easily. Memories of a bloody hand cradling his cheek. His stepmother telling him that nothing ever changes, because no one will ever love someone as dirty as him. That is his curse. To forever live like a bug, no, like a demon. Dizzy because of the drug, Aseph would have stumbled out and met the first person whose life he would end with his own hands. Elmore. A single slice would have sufficed, making him fall to the floor. Aseph would have decided that he was far too dirty for any love to fix him, and left the estate with that thought, searching for more victims. But Aseph couldn't quite leave when a shameless woman is still clinging to him in the morning. He wonders what she is dreaming about so peacefully, only for her to start whimpering his name as tears start streaming down her face. My god, I hope this guy has darkrophilia because then at least someone can get something out of this. Aseph wakes her up with confusion. Elzay realizes he must have stayed the entire night and is relieved. She gives him a smile and suddenly calls him by title again. Aseph does not take that hot-cold treatment well and directly asks her what she wants from him. It's a valid question when she's sitting in his bed in a nightgown. It's less valid for him to topple her over without a warning, just because he can, I guess. When she storms in like this and clings to him, he could assume she has less pure intentions. He comes unpleasantly close as he asks. Elzay keeps having the social skills of a waterlogged pebble and claims it was a misunderstanding. She just wanted to bring his coat back. At 3 a.m. in a nightgown, like any stranger would. Aseph might somehow believe her. He withdraws and then puts on the mask he usually wears again. He apologizes for his rough treatment. It's because today is his mother's death anniversary. That's why he is so on edge. Tears come to his eyes. He begs her to keep quiet about his current state. Elzay knows he is lying, but immediately agrees. To thank her, Aseph puts her into a hug, because he has realized that this woman has feelings for him. A prime position for him to use her if he is just a little kind to her. His hand brushes through her hair. He tells her she is like spring, a season that fills the empty spaces with blooming flowers. She is his spring. Man, this guy is smooth. The only problem is Elzay knows he's lying so hard it's a miracle his nose hasn't grown to the moon yet. Just then, Elmore knocks and brings some medicine. Aseph snaps at him, but quickly corrects his behavior once he realizes Elzay is there. He pats her head and keeps acting kind. He tries to step away for a moment and is immediately stopped by Elzay, who gets worried he will hurt someone after all. Aseph reveals he might be peak husband material despite everything because he replies to her request to stay close with "how close is enough? Does that mean I can't leave the room anymore?" He is very willing to carry her wherever she needs to go. At least Elzay isn't shameless enough to ask him to come with her to the bathroom, but he has to stand by the door like a pet. To his credit, he does that without complaining. Elzay refuses any mates, fearing that they might tell Aseph about her seal. She realizes Aseph must think she's a strange person. And he does. However, this boy is already whipped, so it's okay. He catches himself staring at her and quickly turns away. As they eat breakfast, Elzay claims she had a bad dream, so she hopes for Aseph to stay home today so that nothing happens to him. Aseph finds this a bit strange, but he agrees, under the condition that she returns a favor. She will be his partner at this year's Codes. He'd be sad if she rejected him. Haven't they become such good friends? Truly, this guy can put on a perfect puppy look. Elzay would love to, but she already invited Lady Tirossi to join him. She should reject him, but she simply can't bring herself to do so. So, she says she has to think about it first. Aseph is disgruntled at that response. This girl was all over him last night. Suddenly she hesitates? Weird. But he keeps acting nice and feeds her some pills against the effect of that drug he calls Otion. The sly fox also gives her his coat because hers is all dirty. Now they'll have to meet again so she can give this one back. But before she can leave, Elissa storms in. It seems she will meet Aseph even before she was supposed to. What if he falls for her at first sight, like in a novel? If so, Elzay ruined everything. Aseph catches that scared expression on Elzay's face. He worries and offers to send Elissa away. But Elissa already runs up the stairs, hiking up her skirts to stomp toward her target. Elzay promptly slaps her shoulder for that unladylike behavior. Aseph is even more confused. They greet each other and decide, I don't like him. I don't like her. Elissa assumes this guy is trying to seduce her precious sister, and Aseph just finds her unappealing somehow. Elzay gets worried when she accidentally brought these two together early, and I'm giving you a second to guess. She cries again. Elissa sees and assumes Aseph must have made her Zay cry, so she yells at him. Aseph seems to be a professional rage baiter because he ignores that question and turns to Elzay, asking why that girl is calling her by a nickname. She gets confused and says because that's her sister. Aseph decides he gets to use that nickname too and calls her Zay. Elissa tells him to drop that, so Aseph says she's being quite rude for someone he's met for the first time. Elissa says it's rude for him to point at a lady, and he says he didn't know she was a lady because of how rough she acted. Elissa is ready to fight him at this point. It seems Elzay has successfully changed the novel because those two were not supposed to argue like that in a novel. Well, it's a win because Aseph surely didn't fall for her at first sight, did he? Elzay says her farewell, being slightly exhausted. Aseph seems to be upset that she is leaving so quickly. A few days after, Aseph works in a palace. Two ladies come to thank him for his help and flirt. Aseph deals with them in a perfectly polite manner, even as he gets frustrated. He merely gets upset at the memory of Elzay hesitating when he invited her to the Codes. He kisses a lady's hand and then wipes his mouth as soon as she leaves. He tries to work, but his thoughts wander back. He listened to Elzay's stupid request. He stayed home for 3 full days, and she still didn't contact him? How ungrateful. He breaks his pen with the force he pressed down with. He excuses himself and leaves. Aseph walks through the palace, only to meet Duke Aizen Tiaza, Elzay's father. He is unwell, but swiftly puts on a bright smile. It seems the Duke holds no ill intent toward him. He even deems him a suitable match for his daughter, if only there wasn't that Seul on Elzay. He also whispers to him about the Crown Prince, who has been banned from the capital but might return soon. It seems both Aseph and Duke Tiaza consider backing him. The Duke also admits that Elzay is sick, which worries Aseph. Back at home, Elzay is whining and staring at the coat, wondering if she should return it or not. Should she keep her distance even though she misses Aseph? She doesn't know, because we all know there's no better way to hook a heavily traumatized man than to play hot and cold with him until he isn't sure if you even like him. She gets depressed thinking about it. If there wasn't this despicable Seul, she would go to Aseph instantly. She can't imagine loving someone else. If only... Just then, a sound comes from her window. She looks out. In the faint setting sun, she sees Aseph. He asks her to be quiet and then holds out a hand. He wants her to go out with him. Elzay, who wanted to avoid him, immediately gives in. She lets him help her out of the window and then gets her mouth held shut as guards approach and they have to hide within the bushes. Aseph says that they were lucky they weren't caught, because he would be seen as the villain kidnapping a poor hostage otherwise. Elzay says she isn't a hostage because she's here freely. Aseph thinks she's naive. He asks if he can do something a bit worse now. Will she still not view him as a villain? Elzay responds, saying she'd rather be an accomplice than a witness. They decide to hop the fence, and Elzay fails miserably, so Aseph has to help. He tries to catch her as she jumps too, but they end up on the ground. Elzay can't help but laugh at the situation. Aseph sees that and joins in too. He tells Elzay he likes seeing her laugh. He hopes he will see it more often from now on, and that she'll be less sad around him. Then he gets on a horse and lets her sit in front of him while riding toward his destination. Meanwhile, Elisa can't sleep. She wants to sneak over to her sister's bed, only to meet their mate, who chases her out. Shia claims Elzay is sick, but really, she is worried because her mistress has run off in the middle of the night. Aseph and Elzay gallop through the forest. He is relaxed, she is less happy, so he has to slow down. At their destination, he spreads the blanket and then makes her sit. He gestures up toward the starry sky above them. Elzay is euphoric, eyes wide with awe. Aseph only looks at her. Any woman would fall for the romantic mood here, he knows that. He just has to use the moment to... Elzay realizes he is going in for a kiss and turns her head away at the last second. They can't do this. Aseph takes the rejection somewhat well. He isn't happy, but he pretends to be apologetic. Elzay tears up. Okay. But at least... Oh wait. It's full on crying now. I take that back. On their way back, Elzay feels guilty for hurting his feelings. Aseph is merely glaring at the back of her head. He knows that her feelings for him are genuine, but why is she acting like this then? Part of him would like to force her to tell him right now, but it's better to move slowly. Aseph ups the manipulation again and tearfully begs her to keep his coat, to return it later and see him again. Elzay wants nothing more than to accept him, but she is his worst enemy's daughter, and her Seul will force her to be with someone else. She can't do this to him, so she promises to see him again, because she is his precious friend. But Elzay doesn't think that this is the right answer, and Aseph seems unhappy too. He leaves, remembering every time she clung to him. No, I don't want to be friends with you. I'm going to make you mine, Elzay Tiaza. The next morning, Elzay thanks her maid for keeping her secret. Without a warning, Elisa storms in. She is not pleased to find Aseph's coat here at all, and even wants to tear it up. A grown woman, everyone. Meanwhile, Aseph has sent Almor to find information on Elzay. But since her home is heavily guarded, there was no progress. Aseph tells him to train a maid to send there, just when Elzay arrives at the estate. Aseph sees the coat in her hands and immediately tries to distract her. With food, a horse ride, anything. She insists on handing it back to him though. Aseph brings it away while searching for a new excuse. He already understands Elzay must be coming to reject him. Well, in that case... He opens a small vial with a strange purple liquid and a long needle. Elzay is none the wiser. She still thinks this is the best option, and she climbs onto the horse and enjoys the soft breeze. When she asks if they aren't going a bit far, and when Aseph says that they're all alone out here. When Aseph retrieves that needle and stabs the horse. The poor animal crashes. Elzay screams as they go down. Aseph smiles. He takes the brunt of the fall. He holds his shoulder as he gets up, immediately looking at Elzay. I'm fine, what about you? Elzay's eyes widen as he groans in pain. He got hurt because he protected her. This is her fault. The horse next to them shakes and lets out a pitiful sound. Aseph says it was poisoned. Someone who holds a grudge against him must have tried to kill him. Elzay must be scared now, want to avoid him because of this. Elzay can only think about him being hurt though. She offers to treat him and immediately gets embarrassed when she has to take his clothes off for that. Girl, this is not the moment for impure thoughts, but at least she isn't crying. She doesn't even end up helping, and Aseph has to bandage his own arm. But that doesn't matter. This was just an excuse for her to see all the scars on his body anyway. And he has a lot. Elzay freezes at the sight and starts crying. Inserting my own opinion here, this is one of the moments where having Elzay cry fits perfectly. Many people cry if they find out someone they care about was literally tortured. This guy just admitted he was lashed as a child. Anyone would be furious or devastated. The problem is that Elzay has been crying so many times that it doesn't impact you anymore when she does. If this had been the second or third instance, this would have been a-okay. But it's number 11, so the emotional component has been dried up completely, even for me. And I have a high tolerance for whiny female leads because I am a crybaby too. Anyway, Aseph intended exactly this situation. His mother's discipline was just harsh, he says. It's nothing. And like expected, Elzay doesn't take this well. She takes it so badly that even Aseph is confused as she throws herself at him to wrap her arms around him. She starts wailing even more than before, wishing that she could erase these scars on Aseph's body. Apparently, she sobs loudly enough to blackmail this world's god into acting, because a green glow spreads from his seal and lights up the forest. It connects to Aseph's chest. He turns around in confusion, just as the glow radiates from his body and erases his scars. He turns back to Elzay in shock, and she promptly faints. Back in his estate, the doctor explains that she didn't use holy power. He assumes she must be suffering from an internal injury. Aseph, this immature buffoon, gets upset at the thought of any male doctor examining his unconscious lover, and votes for a female doctor. Only to be extremely hypocritical after, because remembering that she didn't like any mates, Aseph undresses her so that she can be more comfortable. He claims he has no personal agenda, but gets a bit red. But don't worry, he just takes off the outer layer, she's still all covered up. Aseph immediately proves to be an asshole though, because he snips at Elmore for coming in despite previously telling him to just do that. He threatens him too, and even steps onto his foot and presses down until Elmore flinches in pain. But as soon as Elzay wakes up, the fake smile is back in place. He sends out everyone and promises to keep what happened a secret. It seems Elzay doesn't remember healing him though. Aseph immediately uses that opportunity, pretending to be in pain still. He feels so bad, he doesn't like being alone when unwell. So Elzay should stay with him, tomorrow and the day after too. Just then a knock sounds. Aseph is very willing to snap at Elmore again. But then he realizes that Alyssa has shown up. He says that Elzay needs time to rest, so she should leave. Alyssa simply pushes past him. Aseph is very mature and trips her. He even has the nerve to help her up after. And Alyssa is, as expected, not very grateful. They start arguing about why Elzay is in her undergarments, why Aseph didn't send her home, and then about each other's lacking etiquette. They keep arguing until Elzay yells at them to stop. They apologize to her, but still aren't willing to give in. Alyssa calls Aseph a two-faced pervert and then wants to run off, but Elzay says she will stay here and only return in the evening. Alyssa has no choice but to bow to Aseph. He bows to her as well and can barely hide the wide smirk forming on his face. He has all but won. But still, the uneasiness remains. He pulls Elzay into his arms and begs her to promise that she will stay. Elzay feels guilty seeing how affected he is, but in the bathtub, her eyes fall onto that ugly mark. She starts scratching at it, hoping it will come off. It has gotten weaker, so maybe. Meanwhile, Aseph tells a confused Elmore he needs that maid in Elzay's house soon. Elmore starts thinking he might have become a bit kinder upon meeting that lady, only for Aseph to immediately snap at him. Maybe not. Elzay and Aseph eat dinner together. She keeps staring at him, wondering if his feelings for her are sincere. She already starts hoping that her seal was a mistake. that it will fade even more if she gets closer to Aseph. So she agrees to be his partner at the Codes. She wants to take this slow, but she too cares for him sincerely. Aseph can't help but smile. He wants to tie her to him, so he will see her face every day, he thinks. She can take this as slow as she wants to. She is already his. After dinner, he leads her out to offer her a present. A white mare, a super rare one. What a nice gift. Right after they fell off a horse and were injured because of it. Aseph has the nerve to apologize for that incident too. Like he didn't do it on purpose. Elzay falls for it. Hook, line and sinker. She calls the horse Seth, which I'm not sure is a compliment. Aseph brings her home. He promises he will try to go slow, even if his heart is bursting. With that, he leans forward to kiss her forehead. She starts to feel guilty and realizes she has to tell him about the seal. She opens her mouth and is interrupted by her father. The Duke bids Aseph farewell swiftly, leaving our MLs I to swoon over Elzay. But while Aseph is finally sure of his emotions, Aizen reminds his daughter of her seal. She will get sick if she doesn't find her real partner soon, so he will reveal the seal after the Codes. She should stop seeing Aseph from now on. Elzay argues. She begs him not to reveal anything. In her panic, say it with me, she starts crying. Her father caves, saying that he will give her more time, but he still seems to think that this seal is absolute. Elzay wishes it would disappear. Aseph has a nightmare about a brown-haired woman who tells him she can't be with him. His beloved Elzay. He wakes up in a panic. The next morning, Aseph is miserable. He immediately punishes his poor servants for it because a maid makes a small mistake and he slams her hand away in response. She cries and Elmore has to intervene. He shows that Elzay's gift is ready and a maid has been sent to the Tiaza mansion as well. However, Aseph is discontent because the third thing he asked for wasn't dealt with yet. He is so discontent that he threatens Elmore with a sword, in fact. Aseph goes to pick up Elzay. As he waits, he is approached by Cesia Tirossi, that lady Elzay wrote to. Unfortunately, she is wearing a perfume Aseph is all too familiar with, one his stepmother used to wear. She tries to touch him and he avoids her. Even so, she insists on calling his name. He wants her again. And Cesia says that awful lady Tiaza must have upset him too. She wrote her a letter asking to meet a while back, and then Elzay just cancelled on her. How rude. Such slight criticism is enough for Aseph to lose it. He called Cesia a pathetic wench. After all, she is bad-mouthing Elzay, even though Elzay did apologize for missing the meeting. Aseph puts his hand on her shoulder and says he would twist her neck if he could. From an outside perspective, it must seem like he's consoling her, but in reality, he tells her to watch her mouth if she doesn't want to be found dead. Just then, someone calls out to him. Aseph, it's Elzay, who's all dressed up. Aseph greets her with a bright smile. Elzay notices Lady Tirossi is unwell. She offers to fetch a doctor. Aseph gets worried too and offers to send one of his maids with her if she needs help. For some reason she rejects this instantly and storms off. Oh well, she must be busy. In the carriage, Aseph immediately starts flirting with Elzay. He had nightmares, he's exhausted. The whole spiel. He rests his head on her shoulder and makes her worry about him. Then he says his shoulder hurts, but she can make it better by helping him purify it. What he means by that? Letting him seduce her. He leans in for a kiss. Elzay asks him to slow down, and he drops the mask for a moment, telling her not to avoid him. He wants to kiss her. Can he? Can he? Can he? Elzay is embarrassed, but quickly tells him not to act like that. We see Aseph's mask snap back on as he stops being aggressive and turns on the puppy look. She says she is scared, so he settles for kissing her cheek and then hugging her. He admits the entire morning was tense, but he relaxed as soon as he saw her. After some cuddling, Aseph hands over his present. A bonnet that happens to match Elzay's dress perfectly. Elzay has worse color matching skills because the gloves she got Aseph are nowhere near the color of his suit. He still throws the old gloves away immediately to be able to wear her gift. He didn't need to throw them away, but okay. They arrive at the Codes. Many people are here already, so they are swiftly pulled apart to get ready for the competition. Surprisingly, Elzay also takes part. So, she gets changed into a rider uniform. I have no idea why she didn't immediately wear this if the race was going to start early. It makes no sense. Moving on. The Codes turns out to be a race. The participants get onto a horse in pairs. They do the first 5 rounds together. Then one partner jumps off and gets a flag while the other finishes the 5 rounds alone. Aseph seems convinced they'll win, while Elzay worries. Next to them, Elzay spots a pair of twins, both with white long hair and pink eyes. She looks away as the woman looks at her, noting that they feel familiar. Then the Emperor gives the signal. Somehow I expected a more typical noble race, like everyone just kind of going around the pond, slowly maybe, but no, these guys are booking it. They actually jump over real obstacles too. Aseph is pretty good at this, and doesn't abuse his horse this time. He brings them to the second place easily. Before them are only the twins. Elzay remembers them from the novel. The Sistine twins. The people who plan to win the contest to receive a wish from the Emperor. They intend to ask for the Crown Prince to return to the capital. Before she can think about what to do, Aseph finishes the 5 rounds and jumps off. He promises to return the flag quickly, so Elzay has to do some laps on her own. She starts galloping. She takes a deep breath, telling herself not to be scared, and makes the jump. Aseph returns just in time and jumps back onto the horse. The poor thing has to carry 2 grown adults and jump with them. Remember that. This horse is the real hero here. They come closer and closer to the twins. Just then, Elzay realizes that, if they win, won't the Crown Prince be... They cross the finish line, in first place. The original victors from the novel can only stand there in fear, knowing that the prince, who was relying on their victory, will return home and be arrested as a traitor. Elzay can't let that happen. Not when Elissa will lose her partner that way. She turns to Aseph, but just before she makes a request, he is called away. Aseph kneels before the Emperor and is congratulated for his victory. He is offered one wish. He smiles and lifts his head. Please bring Prince Alceste back. Because of course, Aseph also relied on a crown prince. The Tiazi family too, so there was no reason to hesitate before asking him about this. He literally has a political motive to do this. But of course Elzay didn't think about that at all because she doesn't care for politics. The Emperor isn't pleased. Prince Ludwig isn't either. The Crown Prince was sent away on the Emperor's orders, so how could he return? Aseph says he's merely worried about the relationship between father and son. Besides, the Crown Prince is a hero now. The nation would be grateful. Without any choice, the Emperor gives in for a limited time. Prince Ludwig deems it a direct attack. Eisen is pretty upset that Aseph did something so foolish. It brought him into grave danger, even if Aseph says that you have to take a risk sometimes. Elzay is more worried about him. He calms her down by promising he intends to live a long life with her. Then he sends her off to get ready for the ball. Aseph does the same. He glances at himself in the mirror, still being a bit confused by his missing scars. Elmore comes in and admits he had to give up the auction. The verdure of Akel was sold to Prince Ludwig instead, and the root of Anaisha. Aseph slams his fist against the mirror. He stares at his own face through the shards and the blood while calling the prince a bastard. If that guy wants a fight, he will pay the price. Aseph will not let him win. The verdure of Akel, a legendary jewel given by the goddess of life to her daughter. It is a treasure of immeasurable worth and highly sought after. Why would Aseph need this? Perhaps because nobles in this country tend to propose by offering a jewel in the color of their lady's eyes. Elmore was determined to get it for his master, only to see that the jewel was sold to someone wearing Prince Ludwig's crest. And he also bought the root of Anaisha, an ingredient for a poison that can paralyze limbs. Why would the prince need this? But that's not what Aseph is worrying about. He assumes that the prince wishes to propose to Elzay to bring Duke Tiazi to his side. And to him, this means he must kill the prince, even if he loses his own life in the process. Elmore vows to support him with his own life. Elzay goes to take a bath. As her seer glows, she realizes it has become stronger again. Despite all this progress she made with Aseph, it seems it wasn't enough. Tears come to her eyes. She loses consciousness. Shea storms in, trying to hold her up. The seal starts leaving deep marks on her skin. The seal's sickness might have started. She needs a doctor, but Elzay begs her not to call one. Shea gives in, even if she is scared. Aseph is immediately informed of the fact that Elzay cried, because that new maid reports every detail to him. He hasn't heard about the seal, but he is quite upset already. They prepare to go to the ball. Elzay wears yet another dress, somehow. But Aseph notices that she is off. She doesn't meet his gaze directly and seems upset. He escorts her to the ball, where they are applauded as the winners of the contest. The Emperor seems polite, but seeing their linked hands, his expression darkens. As the two dance in the middle of the ballroom, Prince Ludwig seems disgruntled too. Elzay thinks about how she will break Aseph's heart. despite loving him so much. All of this is her fault. In her grief, she... What do you think? She tears up. Aseph notices she is trying to run away. He will not let her. The dance ends, and he loudly announces that he loves Elzay. Really, the most stupid decision. Remember everyone, love confessions are done in private unless your partner straight up told you they want a public confession. Because this is a nightmare when it comes to outside pressure. I felt a panic attack coming even while simply reading this. As everyone starts muttering, Elzay realizes he will end up just like in the novel. Because of her. She tries to back away, but Aseph pulls her closer. He tells her those damning words again. I love you. And Elzay says that she doesn't love him. As if that wouldn't hurt him too. The ball comes to a grinding halt. Aseph freezes in place. Was everything a lie? He can only stare as Elzay starts crying but doesn't say anything. And now, ladies and gents and lieges, what would you expect to happen? Most stories add 100 chapters of isolated longing now, of misunderstandings and dragged out arguments. But we have a yandere here, so... Aseph simply says no. He won't let her run away after everything she did to make him depend on her. He grabs her arm and drags her out of the ballroom. Elzay suddenly calls him Lord Randall again. She tells him to be careful in public. What will other people think of him? But Aseph has long stopped caring and drops the sane act. He tells her to scream and tell everyone how he insulted her. She can drag him to court and ruin his honor entirely if she insists. But she won't, because she does love him. So whatever he does, she won't ask for help. If she hates him so much, she should bite her tongue until she suffocates. He won't back down otherwise. He still leans in to kiss her. Elzay is still crying, mind you, for anyone who cares. But she sure does kiss him back. Aseph puts back for only a moment. He asks if she truly doesn't care for him. Elzay stands there like a wax statue and doesn't respond. Because why not when you can just keep crying? Aseph puts his coat around her and then kisses her again. Now Elzay has found her voice, and I wish she didn't, because she immediately tells him she does, in fact, not love him. What would a sane man do? Probably give up? Maybe ask in confusion or grief because she showed her interest so openly before. But this is Aseph. Therefore, he says she pushed him down a cliff. She pulled him up to the heavens and then pushed him down to hell. Usually, I wouldn't agree with such emotional manipulation, but in this case, Elzay literally did know that he was that close to losing it, so you know. But it gets worse, because Aseph knows how to traumatize someone even more. Because Aseph says it's useless if it's not her by his side. He opens his coat and pulls out a dagger. He tells her not to worry. He would never hurt her. Here comes the part you might wish to skip if you are sensitive to this subject on screen. You can skip to this timestamp. Elzay already understands. She begs him to stop and tries to reach for the dagger. But he puts her hands down so she won't get injured. He lines up the dagger with his stomach and presses down. He actually bleeds. Elzay panics. Aseph is serious, thinking she will at least remember him this way. And Elzay breaks and finally admits she has a seal of God. It took a self-harm attempt to make her admit that? Sure. That's also a way to solve a conflict, I guess. Aseph freezes. Elzay uses the chance to steal his dagger so that he can't hurt himself anymore. She, cleverly, hurls it out of the window beside them. Aseph isn't even focusing on that. He asks her to repeat what she just confessed. Does she really have the seal of God? Elzay simply shows it to him. That green mark on her chest that ruins so much for her. It's already leaving painful streaks on her skin. Aseph is frozen for a moment. Then he covers his face. He struggles to stand and comes closer. He presses his thumb onto the seal, rubbing over it, almost like he hopes it might come off. He wonders if he should take it out. He means with a cleaver or something, I presume, but we all know that's useless. Aseph loses his temper and curses. Elzay reaches for him. She apologizes. She knows she deceived him, but she loves him so much. Aseph seems even more upset. So she did realize she was hurting him. He bows down to pick up the coat that fell down. He wraps it around her shoulders, even as he tells her he doesn't forgive her. Elzay finally confesses that she does love him. She loves him more than her own life. But once she meets her partner, won't that come to an end? How can she claim to love him when that love might turn to dust? Aseph pulls her into a hug as she cries even harder. She apologizes 100 times, saying she didn't wish to hurt him. He merely brushes over her head and tells her to calm down. Just then the door opens. Duke Tiaze appears with Alyssa by his side. He yells at Aseph, and upon seeing the blood, assumes he must have hurt Elzay. He immediately attacks him. Aseph calmly says that it was the opposite. Aizen is still a pretty good dad because he doesn't care what happened. He just wants Elzay to be safe, so he asks her to come with him. Aseph gets all corny and stands between them. She's mine. Boy. That's her dad. Aizen gets rightfully mad, and Aseph proves that he is messed up in all the right ways because he claims that Elzay stabbed him. He is generous for letting all of this calm down quietly when he could make a big deal out of this. And Elzay agrees with him. Aseph says if he goes to the ballroom now, injured with 3 members of their family following him, won't people believe him? However, he won't do so. All he needs is for Elzay to be his wife. Then he won't persecute this. Maybe he is threatening them, but his heart is sincere. Aizen gets mad, but Aseph tells him that Ludwig is looking for that jewel and that poisonous root. At the mention, the Duke tenses. It seems he was confronted with that poison before. Alyssa chimes in. She says she knows how much her sister loves this man, and how much he loves her in return. She thinks they should be together. After all, she has seen how much Elzay hated that seal on her body. Aizen insists that no one has ever broken free from God's will, but even so, will Elzay still choose this man? Elzay says she does, even if she has to reject her fate for it, even if her father is against it, because this is the only person she will ever love. Aizen is quiet for a moment. Then he says that they should leave. He will try to calm the rumors down, but everyone is watching them. Aseph and Elzay leave together, through a door into the unknown future. He hated the world. Ever since he could think, he hated everything. He wanted those who hurt him dead and killed without guilt. Then he met Elzay. He had intended to use her and discard her afterwards, but now things are a little different. Aseph is resting in the bathtub. His side is still bleeding from that dagger. It hurts, but seeing that seal on her hurt more than any blade could ever. He returns to the bedroom and lies next to Elzay. She's finally his. She won't run away from him. If only there wasn't that stupid mark. He looks at it with disdain. He runs his finger down the seal, but that isn't enough. He bites down on it too. Elzay wakes up from the pain and asks what he is doing. Aseph says it hurts him more than it hurts her. He stops nonetheless, and then puts some ointment onto her shoulder. Then he embraces her, saying he is glad she is with him. Elzay uses her deadliest weapon. I love you, Aseph. And the murderer has been reduced to a blushing lapdog. But then Aizen appears and finds Aseph in a bathrobe, and Elzay wrapped in a blanket on the bed. He is unhappy, to say the least. They sit down to chat anyway. The Duke asks if they are sure. The seal will cause Elzay unbearable pain, and Aseph will only be able to watch. They don't even know who her partner is yet. Will those two be able to stay together despite that? Aseph agrees. Aizen sighs. The most important thing was always his daughter's happiness. If she is sure, he will do all he can to help them. Elzay falls into his arms. A while after, Aseph leads the Duke down into the cellar, the torture chamber his stepmother had created, which Elzay will never even hear about. He has to show him something. Aizen first promises to rip him apart if he ever hurts Elzay though. Aseph says he wouldn't mind that. Meanwhile, Elzay is in the garden. She is happy her father supports her, but seems a bit confused why the maids watch her so carefully. Just then, a golden butterfly catches her attention. She starts to follow it, until she lands in a dark forest. And there, she is found by someone else first. A strange person with a dark cloak and sharp teeth, easily 3 heads taller than her. Do you have the seal? They ask. The giant hand is around Elzay's throat. They repeat their question as one of the alleged maids appears on horseback. She swings a sword at the thing, standing between Elzay and whatever this is. It's not a human, and she won't be able to win against it. The other maids appear too, but just as the being is surrounded, it fades into black smoke, only to reform behind the commander. It punches her so hard she flies a few steps away, and then bleeds from her mouth. She tells the others to inform the Duke, because they can't defeat this thing. And what's Aseph supposed to do about this, huh? He can't kill demons either. Back in a torture cellar, Aseph shows a chained-up mage. Someone with tattoos revealing that he betrayed God and sold his soul to a demon. He was found leaving Prince Ludwig's castle, That guy might not have hurt Elzay and Alyssa yet, but he is planning something. That's why. Aseph stumbles. His chest aches. It's like everything inside him is screaming. Something about Elzay. The person storms in, calling for help. Elzay is dangling from the hand of that thing. He seems to be confused and searches for the mark. Elzay has seen him before, she knows that, but... The beast says it can smell the mark. It's horrible, unclean, worse than the others. He can take it if she's dead too, if she won't show him where it is. Her arm burns under his hand as more black mist rises. He tells her he looks forward to seeing her partner's face once they find her. He raises his hand to kill her as a sword slashes through the beast. It's Aseph. As Elzay falls, he is by her side. He sees her burnt arm and hurriedly asks if she is fine. She says she is, but cries. No, this one's actually fair. Look at her arm. Valid. Aseph has her brought away as he faces that thing. Apparently he can fight demons and furiously attacks, which this being seems to find amusing. Aseph slashes through him again, but that thing just disappears into smoke and black goo. Elzay rushes over to ask if he's okay. Looking at the remains of that beast, she remembers. Actually, the novel Seal of God had a second part. Elzay didn't read it because she dropped it after Aseph's death, but the second part seems to be about an enemy called Zekelian Hild, I don't know, a seal hunter who steals seals and enjoys the people's pain. But he's here earlier than he should be, and he isn't dead. Zekelian puts himself back together. Aseph says Alcester already fought monsters near this beast's home. Zekelian laughs. He hasn't had this much fun since fighting Alcester. Aseph swears to kill him. Zekelian says he enjoys seeing the despair of someone losing a loved one. He takes a sharp turn and rushes toward Elzay. Aseph jumps in front of him at the last second. Blue mana glows around him. Zekelian is impressed. He is just as good as Alcester. What all Aseph cares about is killing this thing here. He manages to slash through his body, but Zekelian merely puts himself back together. Is it because he's a clone? His real body is somewhere else. Zekelian notes Aseph resembles him, so why would he pretend to be so pure? Aseph thinks being a monster would suit him, but he focuses on searching for a weakness. He finds the Achilles heel. Oh surprise. He cuts through it. Zekelian attempts to attack Elzay one last time, but Aseph stabs him. The hunter swears to return for Elzay's seal though. After the fight, Aseph hugs his lover. He wonders how he, a child hated by God, suddenly managed to use mana. Or was it a demon's power after all? It doesn't matter as long as he can protect Elzay. That's when a blinding light appears before their window. It's a man using light magic, Alcester, the crown prince. He seems rather direct, since he immediately comes far too close to Elzay and then grabs her arm without a warning. Aseph asks what he is doing to his fiancée. Alcester's confused by that. He hasn't heard anything about an engagement, but he seems to have good intentions because he swiftly heals Elzay's arm. He also thanks Aseph for allowing him to return to the capital. Apparently he arrived so quickly because he was chasing Zekelian. Alcester asks if Elzay has a mark. Because someone here was targeted by that hunter, Aseph tenses. Alcester raises his hand. He removes his gloves. Does your mark look like this one? It doesn't. Alcester's seal is red. Elzay calmly tells him this, and he calmly accepts. Aseph already drew his sword though. He hurriedly lowers it and realizes he might have lost it. He was about to commit treason in the case this man was Elzay's partner. Alcester asks if they plan to marry, even if Aseph has no mark. As Aseph gets upset, Elzay hurriedly confirms that they don't care about that. They have sworn to stay with each other. That does calm Aseph down. Alcester stays in the estate for a bit. He jokes about Aseph almost trying to kill him just now, but seems friendly. He even gives details about his fight with Zekelian. Apparently, people can survive having their mark taken in the moment, but they end up going crazy sooner or later and end their suffering. Alcester remembers how that hunter swore to kill his partner once he found them. That isn't a nice memory. Meanwhile, Elzay is going to bed. Aseph is already waiting. He cuddles with her and apologizes for not being able to save her quicker. She says she was only scared of leaving him alone. Elzay also makes him swear that he won't harm himself again when he apologizes for cornering her during the ball. They end up kissing, quite intimately, and wetly. They promise they will just touch each other though. They swear their love to each other again. Everything is well until Aseph's eyes fall onto her seal. Alcester promised that Aseph was loved by the goddess of love too. But how could he believe that when he hasn't received a seal? Aseph turns off the light. He keeps holding Elzay. He tells her he loves her. He also admits he was searching for the person who killed his family but has decided to give up. He wants to live happily with her instead. Elzay promises to stay with him and kisses him. For a change, Aseph is the one crying. The next morning the rain stops. Alyssa rides through the forest to see her sister. Unfortunately, the soil is slippery, so she falls onto the wet earth and complains. A hand reaches out to help her up. It's Alcester, who notices the seal on her hand. Duke Eisen arrived at the mansion a moment ago, hugging Elzay out of concern for her. He, Elzay and Aseph are quite surprised to see Alcester carrying Alyssa toward them. The prince immediately asks for permission to propose to Alyssa. He reveals the seal and they stare at each other. Alyssa gets embarrassed and runs off. Elzay follows her and helps her bathe. She scolds her for almost injuring herself, but then congratulates her for the seal. She asks if Alyssa doesn't like her partner. "Are you kidding me?" Alyssa says. "He's perfect. Face, voice and body." And I mean, she isn't wrong. Alcester is roughly 3 times her size. Don't know how that happened. He looked much slimmer in the first few chapters. Aseph is relieved that those 2 obstacles, he means Alyssa and Alcester, might have gotten rid of each other. He accompanies the Duke and Alcester to have a chat. Eisen is clearly worried about whether the prince is a good partner, and even directly asks if he would kill the Emperor to protect Alyssa. They met 5 minutes ago, mind you. Alcester affirms that he would prioritize Alyssa though. Eisen seems upset still, so Aseph takes the opportunity to suck up to him by acting all innocent. He even says that they could move into the Tiaza mansion so that Elzay will never have to be without her family. He would do anything for her and also her relatives, given that he lost his early. Duke Eisen saw this guy threaten to ruin their family, like 2 days ago, but he still falls for it. He accepts Aseph as his son-in-law and praises him. Alcester awkwardly says he will do the same for Alyssa and gets weird looks in return. He brings up that question the Duke asked again. Why does he worry about the Emperor so much? And Duke Eisen starts telling a story about 16 years ago. As Elzay goes to sleep next to her sister, she dreams about the cold city. She searches for Aseph as she spots a little girl with green eyes who pokes her head out of the carriage despite her father's wishes. She says that boy is so pretty. Aseph, a much younger version of him, bruised, holding his mother's hand as they walk through the city. The girl heard that he begged for a cotton blanket, so she wants to give hers to him. Just as she says that, she turns her head. She looks right at Elzay. Elzay can only stare back. Whose memory is this? Suddenly, all memories of her previous life fall apart, shatter, and mix with other memories. Who is she? She awakes, writhing in pain. Alyssa wakes up, and then rushes to get a doctor in a panic. Elzay is surrounded by a green glow. Unfamiliar memories come to her. She is in a pure white void. A splitting headache pushes her to her knees. She only opens her eyes when she sees Aseph. At least, his child version. She reaches for him, only for him to turn to ashes beneath her fingers. Elzay breaks down and, finally, it's time again. Let's say it all together. She cries. Finding herself in a city, she sees Aseph again. He's running from a store clerk, holding medicine in his hands. She rushes after him, all the way through a dark forest. Like in the novel, but this storm wasn't supposed to happen. Aseph reaches the house. It's not burning yet. He stumbles in. Someone is already here. A group of men in black clothes. They say it's good he came early. His parents lie on the ground motionlessly behind him. Aseph wails, and one of the men silences him with a dagger. Elzay can only watch as her beloved is killed before her. A lantern is thrown to the floor and flames go up. They devour the entire house. Elzay can only hold his charred corpse and cry. The memory buried deep inside her is awakening again. This was Aseph's original fate. He is meant to die a gruesome death, no matter what. Her own face looks back at her. That young version of Elzay asks if she's willing to accept this ending. Elzay says that she won't. She rises to her feet, following the blue light that glows before her. Remains of Aseph's soul. Even as a wretched face forms in the flames, she screams, "Give him back!" She chases after the blue light. That was 16 years ago. At that time, Elzay had been delirious with a fever. She kept begging her father to save him, to save that boy she had met in the city. After some time, Eisen gave in. He arrived at the house and had the attackers arrested, but Sophia, Aseph's mother, was already dying. She begged him to set fire to the house, to pretend that her son had died too. Otherwise, the people behind her death would harm him too. Eisen obeyed, and soon after, he realized that the Emperor himself must have been involved. It seems the Emperor found out and punished him by poisoning his daughters with the Anaisha root. Aizen explains what happened as calmly as he can, but with fear. Aseph balls his fists, trying to contain the feelings welling up inside him. He already understood, even when Aizen doesn't know just who he is telling the story to. The Duke says he let that child run, so once the Emperor asked about whether they had found him, he could really say that he hadn't. What a coincidence, to think that they were linked in such a way. Aseph is taken over by emotions. He can't help but get up and take a break. Alcester isn't quite surprised. The Emperor has always been like this, he says, and now it seems like Prince Ludwig wishes to use the same methods. He intends to marry Elzay, and even got that route, possibly to threaten their family into obeying. Alcester says he understands why the Duke hates the Emperor so much now. He is willing to fight against him too, being part of the Tiaza family now. Aseph stands by a window. He can't help but think it's ridiculous. He was eaten up by hatred for so long when the person he saw was actually trying to help him. Because of Elzay. It seems she was always the one saving him. He's so glad to meet her again, too. Alyssa stumbles toward him. She seems panicked. Elzay is trapped in complete darkness. She only has that blue light that becomes dimmer and dimmer. But then the dark mist rips it away too. Elzay screams in despair. Still crying, of course. And collapses. When the dark is filled with faint green light, flowers bloom around her. A pale woman with an eye fold and a long white gown appears before her. Premessa, the goddess of love. Elzay weeps for Aseph, and Premessa leans down to console her. Aseph isn't dead. She has protected him numerous times, while Elzay has sacrificed her soul each time. Premessa will protect her as well. The sky above them lights up. They are now in the middle of a flower meadow. Premessa explains that Elzay has the ability to resonate with people. This ability activated when she saw Aseph as a child and immediately recognized his ill-fated future. He was supposed to die, without knowing love or hatred. But Elzay saved him and had to pay a price. Her own life. That was why Alyssa had no sister in the first timeline. The demon that wanted Aseph's soul refused to give up though. Once he fell for Alyssa and gave his soul to the demon, everything returned to how it should have been. Premessa sent Elzay's soul far away, so that she wouldn't attempt to help Aseph again. But then she found that novel and longed to return so much that the goddess had no choice. Even now, Premessa offers to send her back to that other world, to her old life. She will be able to live happily and peacefully there. Elzay refuses. She can't live without Aseph. Premessa already knew she would say that. She smiles and says that she will let her return to him. Elzay's eyes fly open. Aseph is by her side instantly. He was so scared. He clings to her desperately. Outside the room, Alcester notices that Aseph forgot to mention he threatened to kill everyone while Elzay was sleeping. Alyssa tells them they should leave those two alone. Alcester notices that Alyssa's foot is still aching and offers to heal it. Alyssa is a bit shy but lets him do that. Alcester uses the opportunity to propose while he is kneeling, while holding her foot of course. Alyssa can't help but laugh. Alcester gets embarrassed, but she quickly rests her hands on his cheeks and tells him that he is her fated partner. Of course she will marry him. Elzay wakes up again, now in the middle of the night. The pain has disappeared. Aseph is sleeping next to her. She reaches out to brush over his head. She says she can endure any pain if it helps him get better. In the morning, Aseph is overjoyed. She seems to be well again. He kisses her and starts touching her a bit too. She notes she hasn't bathed in a while to stop him, as if that ever stopped any devoted lover. Aseph still returns to kissing her. They have some great priorities after she was just in a coma for 3 days, but Aseph cannot help it. He has lived only for revenge, but now he has found something better, something more worthwhile. Elzay has always protected him, so he will protect her from now on too. In the cellar of the mansion, low muttering sounds. The chained-up magician lifts his head. His eyes turn black with white pupils, just like... Elzay remains unaware. Thinking back to that attack, she shivers. She's uncertain as Aseph suggests going out but gives in. While Elzay prepares the food, Aseph works through the entire night to make some free time. Elmore shows up. Apparently he broke into the Tiaza mansion and found a paper Elzay wrote a while back. It's all in Korean, so neither of them can figure it out. Aseph is a little worried. He tells Elmore to check on that mage in the cellar just in case. Our couple goes to have a picnic. Elzay made sandwiches. Apparently cooking eggs and bacon is enough for Aseph to praise her like there's no tomorrow. He even praises her for the strawberries, the ones she merely removed the stems from. Aseph happily bites into a sandwich and Aseph gives her a bright smile while he is chewing on what he assumes to be eggshells. He says it's amazing, but secretly gets worried as Elzay says she wants to learn how to bake too. He distracts her by saying she should teach their children how to bake later. Much later. Elzay mentions she dreamed about Aseph tonight. She saw him back when he was 5 years old. She quickly hugged him and kissed his cheek. He was so cute, she wanted to stay with him. In response, this absolute buffoon of a man gets jealous. Not like in a cutesy, jokey manner. He gets legitimately upset and asks if Elzay secretly wants to be with someone else if she has such dreams. He even brings up a punishment. The punishment is not being able to eat the strawberry he puts onto her lips. So you know, maybe he was joking after all. I'm not sure. Aseph comes closer and attempts to eat the strawberry from between her lips. Elzay quickly gets embarrassed and spits the strawberry out. What a waste of a perfectly good strawberry. Aseph leans over to kiss her when they are interrupted by Alyssa and Alceste. Alyssa once again has no social awareness and simply plops down next to them, despite Aseph's annoyance. He only gets more upset when she starts feeding Elzay strawberries. Aseph complains to Alceste, but the conversation quickly turns serious as the prince suggests returning to the capital. Now that Alceste has become a hero and Elzay will be engaged to someone else, Ludwig might be getting nervous. He has gathered magicians, so they should be where lots of eyes are. As Alyssa and Alceste step away for a moment, Aseph and Elzay rest on a blanket. Aseph asks her what she's dreaming about every night. Elzay hesitates but then admits she dreams about her most precious person being harmed. As she speaks, tears well up. Aseph realizes that it was about him. That's why his Elzay is in so much pain each time she calls out his name. He feels incredibly guilty, but he also wonders if the seal of God is causing Elzay so much pain. Even so, he can't leave her. He would rather kill her fated partner. He gets lost in a jealousy again and asks Elzay if she'd rather be with the other person instead of him. In response, Elzay bites his lip. Harshly. She gets all mad at him. How dare he say he would hurt her partner or that she would leave him? For a moment, Aseph asks if she does wish to leave him, but she says he is her partner. He should never say such things again. Seeing his despair, she hugs him and then pulls down the dress to reveal her seal. Aseph gets a bit embarrassed, but she tells him to touch it. Then she asks him to open his shirt too. He gets red but obeys again. As his chest comes into view, Elzay can't help but get sad. There's still no mark. Why? Shouldn't it appear when they are clearly meant to be? Aseph absolutely misunderstands her intentions. His face is still flushed, as he asks if she wants to go to a more private location. Elzay is quite dense for an adult woman. She invites him to the bed, even as he asks if they don't want to wait for the sun to set. Then she says he can rest his head on her for a nap, because she assumed he meant he was tired when he said he couldn't hold back, while she was touching his chest. Aseph is a bit disappointed. He still enjoys the moment though. He ends up falling asleep and wakes up, seeing that Elzay has dozed off too. He leaves the room as quietly as he can, but just as he closes the door, Marcus! Elmore calls for him. Aseph holds his mouth shut immediately and asks what he is yelling for. Elmore leads him down to the cells and shows that the magician has turned grey. He looks really weird now. His body seems to be covered by black spots and blood drips out of his mouth. He isn't alive anymore, but no one even came here. Aseph gets close to check on it, which makes Elmore shriek in fear. Aseph snaps at him and investigates the magician. There's no sign of life, so Aseph turns back to Elmore. Just then, the corpse suddenly opens its mouth and jumps at Aseph. Its black eyes locked onto their target. Aseph barely avoids him, given that the magician is still chained to the wall. He quickly realizes what is going on. Sekilion has entered this body. He vows that this isn't over and that he is just waiting for his time to strike. He will kill Elzay before Aseph. Aseph says he won't get close enough and aims his flat palm at the other's head. A blast of mana shoots out like a bullet. It seems to be enough to knock Sekilion out of this body. Aseph says Alceste can purify the remaining body. Maybe they'll get answers out of this. Somewhere far away, the black mist returns to its original body. Sekilion grins. He will not fail this time. 4 days later, the preparations for the departure have been made. Aseph is once again a terrible boss and scolds Elmore for being too slow. Elmore is pretty much done with him. Elzay appears and Aseph immediately grins at her. He acts like a puppy, while Elmore can only grit his teeth. Well, until Aseph tells him to hurry up and get Elzay a drink. Charming. Elzay at least tells Aseph to get along with Elmore, but she is a little too smiley while saying it. It's a joke to her, as if she didn't just see Aseph being rude AF to his employee. At least he gets his payback because he wanted to talk about the next spring with Elzay, but then Alyssa comes and interrupts him. Aseph at least manages to, convince Alceste to ask Alyssa to share a carriage with him, so that both couples can be alone. Elmore returns with a drink, just in time to be yelled at because he was too slow and should get on the carriage instantly. Man, the poor guy. I feel bad for him. During the carriage ride, both couples are busy flirting. Aseph makes a snow bunny for Elzay with his mana, but it melts quickly. He demands a kiss before offering another one, and just then, the carriage comes to an abrupt halt. Aseph looks out of the window just in time to see a fireball being hurled at them. He grabs Elzay and jumps out, running away just before the carriage explodes. Before they can catch their breath, Elmore comes running. He begs for help, being chased by a group of men in black cloaks. Men with suspiciously grey skin and black eyes. Aseph tells him to get down and throws his mana at him. Elmore screams and gets to the floor at the last moment. The magic shoots past him and rips the attackers apart. For a moment everyone is still. Then Elmore cries. He really thought Aseph would kill him too. Aseph says that's nonsense, but just then, more attackers approach. Aseph grabs his sword again. He tells Elzay and Elmore to get behind him. He fights those creatures, but they are strong. Those aren't human either. Maybe demons, he thinks. Just then, Elzay is attacked. Elmore defends her, but gets bitten in the process. Aseph freezes his arm with magic, and says they have to wait for Alceste to heal it. Then he faces their enemies again. Meanwhile, our beefy Alceste has absolutely no problem ripping apart all of the demons attacking him. All while carrying Alyssa. And Alyssa also isn't helpless. As a demon grabs her ankle, she simply stomps him to bits. At that moment a cloaked figure appears. Alceste recognizes them instantly. It's Ludwig, who has a strange black marking on one of his eyes. Just a few hours ago in the capital, Ludwig yelled at his father for turning his back on him, and suddenly putting Ludwig on trial. How could he do that? The Emperor says it's because he, with his inferiority complex, will do foolish things to this country. In his anger, Ludwig runs away. A figure appears before him. It's Zekilion in his real body. He offers his magic to Ludwig and says he will give him something he wants. Back in the present, Ludwig attacks Alceste, intending to kill him. Alceste begs him to come to his senses, but fights when it becomes necessary. He knocks over Ludwig with a single punch and holds the sword to his neck. Alceste is raging, asking how a prince could betray God and sell his soul to a demon. Ludwig blames Alceste for everything, grabs his sword and attacks him again. Meanwhile, Aseph defeated the attackers. He has lost most of his strength though, and even has a small wound. As in, like a mini cut on his cheek. Elzay rushes to him and holds his cheek. When he notices she is cold, this asshat orders Elmore to remove his jacket to give it to Elzay, even though that guy is injured and also very cold. Man, what a giant piece of. Alceste defeated his enemy off screen. Wow. Ludwig has started to beg for his life. He swears he will leave the capital and never return. Alceste is more than disappointed in him, but gives in. He turns his back to him and laments. Even if he isn't killed, Ludwig won't survive much longer. He gave away his soul and it comes as no surprise to anyone that Ludwig reveals a dagger and lunges at Alceste's back. Alyssa screams for him, and we zoom out to see that Alceste has done the most metal thing in this entire story. He literally stopped the dagger with his palm. He says his pity is wasted on someone like Ludwig. He raises his sword and goes through with the execution this time. He then removes the dagger from his hand and throws it at Ludwig. A second later, Alyssa throws herself at him. The two couples reunite. The sisters hug while Alceste explains what happened with Ludwig. Just then the white-haired twins from the Cordes appear. Angela and Huey explain that Ludwig was stripped of his title as a prince, because one of his servants had disappeared and brought chaos and terror to the capital. Apparently, several people with the seal were killed. Their seals had been removed from their bodies. Alceste announces that they will return to the capital immediately. He finds himself bitter about Ludwig's death. That guy was favored by their father for so long, and then he lost that trust. He just had to blame it all on Alceste. As someone asks about his injury, Alceste claims he is fine. Alyssa complains and says he isn't. The others agree, and so they decide on a short rest in the city. Elzay carefully asks about the case and is told that it is currently called, very creatively, the seal hunting. This also happens to be the name of a chapter in the second novel of Seal of God, that novel that Elzay didn't finish. Not sure how that helps us, we established that before. Moving on. Aseph uses the inn to immediately get some one-on-one time with Elzay again. It's just the two in a small room, and as he mentions that, Elzay flinches like an abused puppy for some reason. I really don't know why she's that shy when she's literally whipped for this man 24/7. Anyway, this is such a bad moment after they almost died an hour ago, but Aseph climbs on top of his lover as soon as he can. He then teases Elzay and says he was thinking about a nap. What made her so embarrassed? As if they hadn't already made out quite a lot. But after some short cuddling, Elzay's expression turns grim. She says she worries about Aseph a lot. She doesn't want him to be hurt even more. Aseph suddenly feels guilty for worrying her. He promises to pay more attention from now on and then leans over with a kiss. The view zooms out. We see that a cloaked figure is watching them from a window. Before they can do anything, Alcester catches them though. A knock sounds on the door. Aseph is quite disgruntled to find Alyssa there. But apparently, Alcester is the one wishing to talk to him alone. Aseph does not want to leave his lover, but has no choice. The cloaked figure is already waiting in Alcester's room. It's Shea who brings a letter from the Duke. Oh, I almost thought the story forgot about her. She was gone for at least 30 chapters. Eisen wrote a short record about the Emperor's actions. Apparently, he was the sole person who hadn't been seen during the seal hunting. In other words, he might have been responsible and simply blamed this all on Ludwig. Maybe he even did this to use him against Alcester, who has light magic and could harm anyone making deals with a demon. Aseph asks why Alcester was banned from the capital in the first place. Alcester says that he was a child, but his father just looked at him like he was a monster for some reason. But if the Emperor had viewed him as a threat because of his magic, why would he have left him alive? Because he's his son? Aseph averts his gaze. No, even if it's his son, the Emperor would be able to kill that child. He thinks back to the fire. Maybe that baby in his mother's stomach back then. Maybe that was a child of the Emperor too. If the Emperor truly did cause her demise, he already killed his own child. Aseph says they need proof that the Emperor conspired with a demon though. Alcester retrieves a small vial. It contains the poison of the Anaisha root. Ludwig carried it with him. Probably to poison Elzay. But now, they could use this against their enemies. Alcester visits Elzay's room. He sees Alyssa still sleeping and says he wants her to stay here while he returns to the capital. Then he leaves. Back in Duke Tiaza's mansion, Shea brings a letter. She announces that Alyssa is paralyzed. The Duke drops his cup. Of course, all of this is a plot. We know that Alyssa is doing just peachy, but Aseph came up with this plan. Alcester wasn't happy about it, but he agreed to leave her there while he goes to purify the capital. On the way, he even reminds his allies to spread rumors about Alyssa. Alcester returns to the capital. We see Castle Nim in the distance. There, in a dark palace, the Emperor sits on his throne. He seems worked up, gritting his teeth and arguing with the black mist around him. The mist taunts him, says it's his fault for keeping Alcester alive. Did he do that because that boy reminded him of Sylvia? The Emperor tells him not to say that name and blames him in return. This mist was with Alcester for 20 years and also didn't do anything. The mist takes a human form before him. He calls the Emperor Aiden, his name and not his title. He says he has no reason to help him. They have no contract after all. The Emperor snaps and calls the mist filthy. Zekilian laughs. He says he always loved hearing the cries of deliciously ripe souls. He leans closer to the Emperor and says Aiden was the one who gave him a feast not so long ago. Shouldn't he remember that? The Emperor does remember. When he was a young man, he saw a beautiful woman, Sylvia, a woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. She wasn't Aseph's mother, no, but there was a resemblance. The Emperor fell for her, but she already had a man by her side. He wanted to possess her anyway and pulled her to his bedchambers against her will. She cried, saying that she loved someone else, no matter how many gifts and riches he promised her. Worse, she even had a seal chaining her to that man whose life she kept begging for. The Emperor, in his delusion of thinking that the will of the gods had to be his, accused the man of making a deal with the devil and had him executed. He, who had received everything he wanted until then, married that woman against her will and had a child with her. But whenever he reached for the crown prince, she looked at him with wrath and told him to get his hands off her child. In his wrath, the Emperor choked her. He blamed her seal, but in the end it was he who killed her that day. Zekilian reminds him with mockery as the Emperor cries, and then the doors open. Alcester steps in. At the same time, Duke Tiaza rushes to receive the guests. He sees Aseph carrying an unconscious Alyssa and snaps at him. Aseph attempts to apologize, but the Duke slaps him. He says he will never trust him again after he promised to protect his children and failed, and then leaves, taking Alyssa and Elzay with him. Back in the palace, the Emperor remembers seeing his 5-year-old son kneel before him, begging to stay in the capital. Back then, the Emperor told him to go die somewhere else. Yeon remains invisible, but whispers to the Emperor. He tells him Alceste is destined to take everything away from him. That is the price for his sins. Alceste reveals a bloody dagger. He says it belonged to Ludwig. Did the Emperor know he made a deal with a demon? The Emperor doesn't reply. He scolds Alceste for being rude as he becomes upset. Upon being asked if he even cares about Ludwig, he responds that both Ludwig and Alceste are like his pet birds. He can replace them easily, no matter what. The Emperor notes Alceste's eyes hold the same hatred his mother's did. Alceste turns around and leaves, but not without saying that he is no longer a child longing for love. He will do what is needed. Back in the Duke's mansion, Elisa rests on a couch. She abruptly wakes up and asks if her father is fine. Eisen says he is. It seems he was warned in that letter Shea brought a while back. All of this was an act, though he did enjoy slapping Aseph. Elzay thanks Shea for risking her life to create this opportunity. She gives her a hug before returning to her room, where she starts searching for a diary. Aseph scares her as he appears right behind her. They flirt a bit as she asks if he is okay after that slap and then sleep on her bed. The next morning, Alceste appears. He informs Aseph of his visit. He didn't see or talk to Yeon, but he could feel his presence. They discuss with the Duke and plan to stay at the estate for a while, allowing them to keep their nights together. Surely the Emperor will attack soon. Elzay finds the diary, only for Aseph to steal it from her immediately. He can't read the Korean letters still, but he identifies a name, so Elzay gets embarrassed and hides the diary. Aseph asks her to teach him that unknown language. He promises he won't read her diary, but, I'm not sure I believe that. As soon as he has the chance, Aseph practices writing Korean letters. As if that had priority, while you are literally waiting for the Emperor to try to kill you. We even get a few speech bubbles glazing the Korean letters for being super amazing to learn, so yeah. He does that instead of working. Then the Duke appears, and Aseph joins him while leaving the palace. The crowd whispers about what happened to Elisa, and if she might have a seal. They meet Alceste, who brings a letter. The Emperor invited him to the assembly meeting tomorrow, a meeting that only high-ranking nobles, the Emperor and the Crown Prince can attend. This would be akin to recognizing Alceste as a prince and a future ruler. Why would the Emperor do this? Aseph assumes it might be a trap to busy all three of them, but they have no choice but to attend. As they prepare for dinner, Aseph fetches Elzay. His eyes wander to her diary. Now that he knows some Korean, he can read a few lines, and immediately finds the page where Elzay speculated if her father was the one who burned down Aseph's home. He is tense all throughout dinner until Elzay finally asks. Aseph hesitantly asks about her dreams. Elzay freezes, but he already put some pieces together. She kept mentioning that she has sad dreams, and then she suddenly sent her father to help him. He wants to know what happened. Elzay hesitates, but finally admits that she saw Aseph's life, all his suffering and hardships. He looks at her in terror. Elzay cries as she apologizes for seeing something like that against his will. Aseph starts shaking. He runs his hand through his hair. But Aseph isn't angry. He is devastated. He asks if Elzay also knew that he tried to use and kill her when they first met. She gives a weak nod and Aseph breaks down. He falls to his knees and cries. She knew how filthy and horrible he was? What utter scum he was? Why would she still try to be close to him? Elzay begs him not to say that, but Aseph already assumes the worst. She suffered through all those horrible dreams because of him. It's his fault because he is stuck to her like a parasite. How can he claim to love her when he ruins her like that? Elzay tells him to calm down. She dreams of him because she wants to see him so much. Because she misses him so much. She swears to always be with him, so he cannot push her away. She tilts his chin up and then leans closer to kiss him. Aseph clings to her like she's his last hope. Maybe she is. The next day, the assembly meeting begins. The Emperor and Alceste are present, along with Duke Diaz and Aseph. Before anyone can do anything, the Emperor asks Alceste about Elisa's condition. The Duke gets mad, but the Emperor already keeps talking. He says this matter is too important to keep a secret. He asks if Alceste has a seal that binds him to Elisa. Alceste confirms this and reveals his seal. The Emperor suddenly seems to lose all sense of thinking because he says that his son cannot marry a paralyzed woman. He could make her his concubine though. Not Alceste, mind you. The Emperor. Alceste yells at him and the Emperor provokes him further, saying that Elisa will be bedridden for life. What can Alceste even do for her? Alceste asks if he's meant to crawl before the person who hurt her to beg for an antidote. Before the Emperor? The Emperor slaps him for that accusation. Aseph stands between them and tries to calm the Emperor down. He kneels and tries to appeal to him, but the Emperor takes a candlestick and hits his head. The Emperor asks for them to be thrown out, but they leave on their own. With this, Alcester and Aseph are out of the meeting and have a chance to act freely. Alcester searches for evidence of the Emperor's wrongdoings, only to be interrupted by the knights. He doesn't fight them but creates a holy barrier while he enters the throne room. It reeks of Seul here, but they don't see him. They do, however, find the most obvious secret passageway in existence. Alcester's eyes widen in terror. He expected something bad, but not to this extent. The Emperor's secret room contains human remains and blood. Whatever he did here, it wasn't pretty. The Emperor arrives with his guards and orders them to arrest Alcester, but they also see the cruelty committed here and turn their backs on him. Alcester raises his sword against his father. "You are done for." Back in the Duke's estate, Seul is trying to find traces of the seal. However, the mansion has been completely deserted. A trap. Aseph appears behind him, readying for a fight. He did swear to kill this bastard. Seul is stronger than last time though. The magic attacks don't catch him off guard anymore. He even manages to break Aseph's sword and hit him hard enough to make him cough up blood. But he doesn't intend to kill anyone without a seal. Elzay, however, Seul will kill her in front of Aseph's eyes. Like in every lifetime, he offers to show him. Aseph finds himself in a fiery red realm. He sees Elzay with her back turned. As she looks at him, a boulder falls and crushes her. Aseph can only scream. A voice offers to give him enough power for revenge. Aseph only has to accept this deal, and Seul will help him avoid that pain that plagues him. At a completely different mansion, Elzay jumps up. His sister asks what's wrong, but she merely rushes out and grabs her horse. She knows Aseph is in danger, so she cannot stay here. Aseph takes cover as Seul roars and backs away. He stabbed the other's eye. As Seul curses him, Aseph says he'd rather die than receive help from the demon. He fights, but Seul defeats him quickly. He steps on Aseph's head and orders him to beg for his life. Just then, Elzay comes running and says she won't let him do that. You think she actually can do something against this thing? That she has a plan or something? Nah. Seul laughs upon receiving this opportunity. He lunges forward to attack Elzay, who merely screams and braces for impact. At the last second, Aseph jumps before Elzay. The sword pierces through his shoulder. Elzay can only cry. As Aseph tells him not to die for someone like him again. Seul seems upset, but before he can do anything, a green light spreads from Aseph's chest. He reaches up and activates his mana. He breaks off the sword handle, grabs the blade, and pulls it out of his chest to attack Seul. Seul is frozen by the ice, so he can't avoid the attack. Aseph raises his sword and stabs him. The blade pierces the ground, where remains of black mist slowly fade away. It seems he has managed to kill the monster, but Aseph also collapses onto the ground. Elzay holds him and begs him not to die. Her wails get louder as the rain gets stronger. Green glow tints the vision as a young boy opens his eyes. Aseph finds himself lying in a flower meadow, in a younger body. Before him, a veiled lady appears, Primessa. She says he's currently in a sanctuary of death. He died protecting another life. She kneels to brush over his head. He made up for his errors with this sacrifice, she says. She won't have to worry anymore. Aseph is confused. Primessa gently rests her hand on his chest. She says he couldn't have a seal because he sold his soul to a demon. But since his partner died to protect him numerous times, his soul has been saved. All he has to do now is return to her. She raises her hands and a familiar green seal forms. Aseph, now in adult form, opens his eyes. Elzay is crying for him still. Elzay, with that green seal on her chest. And Aseph, whose wound has healed, seems to have a matching one now. The goddess wishes them the best as they fall into an embrace. The sun breaks through the rain. 2 days later, Aseph has mostly recovered. He is quite peaceful and happy now, knowing that the goddess blessed him. Alcester invites him to visit the Emperor, who's kept in a cell. That guy keeps blaming them for everything, but they only came here for one thing. Aseph asks if he remembers Sophia Elendel, his mother. The Emperor freezes. He does remember her, and like we assumed, he happened to see Sophia while passing by in a carriage. She resembled Sylvia, so he ensured that she would be sold to him. The Emperor laughs. Now that he looks at Aseph, he sees the resemblance. He should have known. Does Aseph want revenge now? Aseph denies that. He only wanted to know the truth. He will be content knowing that the Emperor will rot down here for the rest of his life. Alcester agrees and leaves with him, promising that no one will ever speak to the prisoner again. They leave without another word, even as the Emperor yells after them. Aseph returns to Elzay, who was praying to Goddess Primessa. He takes the opportunity to go down on one knee and offer Elzay an emerald ring. She is the first person he ever loved, so he would like to be by her side forever. Of course, Elzay accepts as they share one final kiss below the goddess's statue. A year after, Elzay wakes up feeling a bit lazy. Aseph says they should get to their family lunch, but she is still sleepy. He picks her up and offers to go wash up together. For some reason, Elzay is scandalized. Aren't they engaged for at least a year now? Why is that an issue? They travel to their destination, joined by a happy Elmore. For the first time, this guy is just allowed to hum to himself and isn't tortured. Thank the goddess. Elzay notes that Aseph has been very close to the Emperor lately. Aseph says it's because they're family. They are welcomed by a very elated Alyssa and a worried Alceste, who seems overprotective of his wife. Duke Tiaza is also present during the meal. Aseph is a bit amused to see the arrogant Emperor yield to Alyssa's will easily. Then the Emperor and the Empress have a bigger announcement. It seems Alyssa is pregnant. Elzay and Duke Tiaza are overjoyed and go to congratulate. The entire family seems happy together. On the way home, Aseph says they should make one too. A baby, he means. 1 year later, Aseph is indeed holding a tiny baby that resembles him a lot, but with Elzay's eyes. The baby's name is Lenteas, meaning the blessing of spring. And with that, both the happy parents and the baby will forever be blessed by the whispers of spring. At the end of this story, I'd like to lead with one statement. This series has so many goddamn sound effects. Like, you probably won't notice if you just read the story, but if you try to paint them over to get prettier pictures, boy, every single picture has some type of SFX drawn over it. Sometimes across the entire picture. If you see any weirdly cropped pictures or awful redraws, that is why. Believe me, I tried my hardest. But no single manhwa has ever required that much editing. Anyway, leaving that out, I would say that the art was pretty good. It is a simpler style, but still distinct enough for you to recognize it immediately. The designs are mostly simple, but I think Aseph is peak character design. His expressions are great and his puppy dog is the best. But other than that, I don't think there's much to talk about when it comes to the visual style of this work. The characters and to a smaller degree the story are certainly the focus. This series is a character-driven story, one where plot does happen, but it is mostly simple and is meant to give the characters a chance to interact more. This may not click for everyone, but this is typically the type of story I personally favor. However, this type of conflict also has the unpleasant side effect of relying heavily on strong characters to carry it, and if the plot isn't built on a lot, the entire thing can fall flat quickly. I am not sure where I would put this work, because I don't think it's a catastrophe. It does a lot of things very well, but it's also quite lacking in other regards. This is mostly based on my personal opinion, but also includes comments I've seen about the series, so let's get into it. Aseph is, I believe, the best part of the story, and judging from the comment sections below this work, many people would be inclined to agree. Aseph is an incredibly flawed person because of all the abuse he went through. The story is very clear about the horrors he experienced. The first 3 chapters detail every step of his life, from his alcoholic and abusive father to the death of his parents and the fire, his life on the cold streets, the forced prostitution to survive the hunger, his so-called stepmother's torture. We aren't just told this. We see the bruises on Aseph's young body, his black eye, his bloody feet, all the scars from the whipping. Very few backstories manage to make you sick to your stomach after just a few lines. This is certainly one of them. It might seem cruel to go into such detail when describing the abuse of a main character, but I do believe it was appropriate here. Because by the end of those few chapters, I fully understood where Aseph might have snapped, why he might have even hurt innocent people. And while the story does have a few moments where he says slightly cringy cliché lines, I think Aseph's background was handled well. The abuse was realistic enough to truly hurt, and we see how it impacts his personality later. Aseph has a grim view of the world that hurt him so much. He doesn't believe he will ever be loved, nor does he recognize the loyalty others offer to him. He seems entirely disillusioned with human relationships and merely lives to get revenge, to find out who hurt his family and to crush them. It's an understandable goal, but he is also willing to kill innocent people to get there, like when he first met Elzay and intended to use and kill her. Aseph is an incredibly good actor. He knows how to use people and how to appeal to them. His polite personality is flawless in public, but he drops the facade as soon as he is alone with anyone he deems not important, like his staff. In reality, he is short-tempered, lashes out physically over small mistakes, has little respect for other human beings, and is pretty childish. This makes sense for someone who has grown up with a lot of violence, regular abuse, and a childhood that didn't allow any time to be a child. These traits impact Aseph's actions throughout the entire series. He doesn't feel like a male lead who was given the label traumatized to explain why he's emotionally stunted or an asshole. He genuinely does feel like a victim of abuse, and has become an abuser because of his tragic story. We are even shown that he has become addicted to a drug. It's incredibly fascinating to see a male lead, where you aren't just told all of this. We actually see his bad traits with him in real time. He starts out wishing to manipulate Elzay, but then becomes confused because she shows genuine affection for him, crying about his pain. That seems like a logical reaction for a man who hasn't been loved by anyone in years. He becomes interested, and now personal feelings mingle with his original plan. But even as he does get interested in Elzay, he doesn't magically turn into a good person. Even at the start, he constantly uses emotional manipulation to win her sympathy. He brings up his dead mother, claims to be lonely, and pretends to have feelings for Elzay. She knows that this is an act, but Aseph does not. He acts under the impression that she has a crush on him, and so feels rejected and is almost indignant as she attempts to avoid him. He pushes her into romantic situations to keep her from turning her back on him, and while he pretends to be understanding of her boundaries, he gets pretty upset whenever she rejects him. I believe the scene that illustrates just how far removed Aseph is from understanding normal boundaries best is the one with the horse, where Aseph was very willing to not only injure himself, or at least fake an injury, risk Elzay's safety, and stab an innocent animal just to be able to guilt-trip Elzay into staying with him. None of these things stopped him because he was so focused on reaching his goal that morality just didn't matter. I think we see the horse after this, so it might not be dead, but still, pretty messed up. Aseph does feel kind of guilty when he sees Elzay cry over his scars, but he never apologizes for this ordeal. Nor does he reject the affection that stems from this incident he caused. In fact, he only gets worse the more attached he gets. To clarify, Aseph is a pretty good lover/almost lover most of the time. He makes sure to spend time with her, is very affectionate, fulfills her wishes. It doesn't feel like an abusive relationship when he treats Elzay well more often than not. However, Aseph becomes protective and possessive to a fault. This is best shown whenever he faces Alyssa. As someone who tends to like jealous male leads, this did bother me a little. Because what do you mean you're jealous of her literal twin sister? Of course they are closer to each other. I am fine with male leads eyeing potential love rivals with skepticism, but this? And then there's the entire ball scene at the end of season 1. Where do I even start? I think this scene shows Aseph at his worst. He ignores how uneasy Elzay is, and then publicly confesses his love for her. Don't do that, by the way. Unless this person directly looked you in the eyes and said, "I want to be proposed to in public," do not attempt this. Aseph put Elzay in the worst possible situation. Yes, she should have communicated with him more. Yes, it was a stupid idea for her to make him fall in love and then to withdraw. But this is still unacceptable. Imagine trying to reject someone while a room full of people is listening to you. Imagine having to interact with all those people during the next few months. Not only that, this could also impact any marriage or engagement chances a noble lady would have in an aristocratic society. Aseph shows no understanding of the pressure he put on Elzay. Instead, he drags her out of the ballroom and then that scene happens. This is probably the wrong place to talk about any of this, but I want to clarify. If anyone in real life ever attempts to threaten you with self-harm should you leave a relationship, do not entertain that emotional blackmail. In most cases, such a claim is purely a bluff to pressure the other person into staying. Anyone who is sincerely suffering from such thoughts is suffering from mental health issues that must be addressed by a professional, and not you. You are not responsible for someone else's life. The only thing you can do is contact family members, the police, or a local mental health support network. Anyone who has the capacity to get involved and possibly enforce some type of discussion, therapy, or even admission. I will treat the scene in this manhwa as distinct from real life, given that it takes place in a fictional setting with fictional characters. Though I fully understand why people might be uncomfortable with this scene. Aseph truly manages to scare you in an almost unsettlingly realistic way. We don't see the scene from his perspective. However, we get to hear one single thought, and that is that Aseph knows he would stay in Elzay's consciousness forever if he died in front of her. If he has to lose her, he at least wants to traumatize her so that she'll never forget him. I don't have to specify this, but that's genuinely messed up. But somehow it also makes total sense for Aseph as a character. He has nothing but his revenge. And now he finally found someone he loves, someone who loves him in return, and then she suddenly rejects him. This might genuinely be his last straw. I kinda wish our couple had discussed this entire situation after it happened, but they moved past this a little quickly. Elzay made Aseph promise he wouldn't hurt himself again, but she wasn't really upset or criticized him. This is consistent with her character though, given that she is pretty much as obsessed with him as he is with her. From then on, Aseph gets a bit more stable, because Elzay finally does admit she loves him too. He is an even better partner in this season, very willing to risk his life to protect her in loud and flashy moments, and to just be by her side in quiet, calm moments. Still, his trauma isn't completely forgotten. He'd like to crawl into Elzay's skin if he could. The existence of the Seul gnaws on him, and he gets terribly jealous, even about his dream version hugging Elzay. The slightest implication, even an unintentional one, sets his separation anxiety off. But even so, a part of him keeps questioning if he's a good partner for Elzay, if she wasn't better off without him. He specifically admits that once she finally confesses that she saved his life numerous times already. Aseph feels terribly guilty for hurting her with his presence and for making her be with him when he considers himself a monster. Even so, he loves her so much he can't imagine being without her. It would be a lie to claim that this dilemma has never been brought up by any male lead. In fact, most of them have this complex. I did feel like Aseph is a well-written example of this mindset though. He doesn't ever lose his bad traits. The good ending doesn't magically fix what hurt him, even if years of consistent affection can heal some scars. And this is important. Aseph is the central character of this story. Most of the conflict stems from his emotional issues and his bond with Elzay. Given that he and their relationship development were rather interesting, even if that happened a bit quickly, this was the best choice. In fact, the chapters from his perspective were typically the strongest. The story heavily relies on him being well written and interesting, and I think the manhwa managed to maintain this for the most part. In fact, I think the story could have benefited from being purely from his perspective. His first time falling in love, being confused why someone would care for him, and slowly letting go of his revenge would have been more interesting than certain other situations we got. I understand that that wasn't the intention, but I did find myself bored of Elzay's perspective during most of season 2. I will get to that later though. Personally, I really appreciated having an obsessive villain male lead that lives up to the title. A lot of his actions are morally grey or dark grey, but he has a legitimate chance to get better. I never felt like Elzay should run away from him or that he was undeserving of redemption. This was especially helped by the fact that he manages to be friends with Alceste near the end too, so it seems like he learned how to form relationships with others as well. With a loving wife, child and family, things are certainly looking up for him. Though, Aseph still has some weaknesses. From episode 1 to the very finale, he is probably one of the worst bosses I have seen in a male lead. There's this running gag that male leads tend to overwork their subordinates, but I've never seen it to this degree. Like, Aseph is constantly insulting Elmore, belittling him, and then physically hurting him whenever he gets frustrated. He threw a vase at him, damn it. Elmore does claim it got better after he met Elzay, but if this is the better side of him, I do not want to meet Aseph in his worst moments. He even seems aggressive with one of the maids for messing up his cufflink once, so yeah. I know this is not comparable to other stuff he's capable of doing, but somehow I found Aseph's smaller evils worse than the big ones. Probably because the only person we see him kill in this timeline is that waste of space that tortured him for years. I'm not gonna say that was justified, but it was absolutely justified. And if anyone asked me about it, I would claim to be Aseph's alibi. What frustrated me more was whenever he abused his employees, or when he stepped that poor horse. Also when he got jealous of his child version in Elzay's dream, and whenever his sister shows up. Like, I love Yanderes. But he gets upset whenever Elzay says she dreamed of him. Really. But even in those scenes, I never found myself doubting whether Aseph would act like that. The author seems to have had a pretty good grasp of his character, and I thoroughly enjoyed his presence for the entire series. I don't think I have any complaints about how he was handled aside from, well, what I mentioned. That Elzay never talked about those threats of self-harm with him again. Which brings me to our next point. For every review or comment praising Aseph, I have seen at least 3 complaining about Elzay. Let us get into that. Elzay is probably the most passive female lead I have ever seen. I have pretty low standards for protagonists, but even I have to agree. Sometimes seeing a character get tugged along by the story can be amusing. Self-inserts have their moments, and not everyone can be strong all the time. But for Elzay, it seems excessive. We have the setup of a Korean woman reading a novel where she sympathizes with the tragic antagonist so much that it impacts her mental health. She can't stop crying about his fate, and almost like magic, she is teleported into his world. She dares to hope that she can meet Aseph, only to receive a seal that, like a cruel joke, implies she is fated to be with someone else. This premise alone characterizes Elzay as someone who focuses on Aseph more than on anything else. Given that he is the most interesting character here, I do not think this is the issue. Having a more sympathetic fangirl character with a sincere interest in this person is actually a viable starting point. I just feel like the story neglects to develop Elzay from this starting point. She remains mostly static, even when the entire reincarnation backstory does explain her deep attachment to Aseph. First of all, the obvious complaint that a lot of commentators bring up: Elzay cries a lot. I am saying this as a very sensitive and emotional person, who cannot stand conflict and is very passive. I do not mind such protagonists. In fact, I find them relatable and often favor them over girl bosses who are overpowered all the time. It is based on personal preference, so either archetype will have fans. However, even I found it extreme with Elzay. For many scenes, she didn't really do much but sit there and cry so that Aseph can console her. This was touching during their very first meeting and that time she saw his scars, and her heart broke because of it. But the emotional impact of those scenes is sincerely weakened by the amount of times she tears up. It actually did not bother me in season 2 anymore, where she cried a total of 5 times over 45 chapters. That's roughly 1 cry every 9 chapters. That's okay. Season 1 did frustrate me a little. In 41 chapters, Elzay cried 14 times. That might not sound like a lot, but when her eyes tear up during every second scene, it becomes frustrating. Elzay cried every 3 chapters here, and many readers did admit to dropping the manhwa because of that. For some it might be because they just don't favor crybaby heroines. That's personal taste. But even for more sympathetic readers, it was a lot. I think this developed because the writing/drawing of a story makes you move much slower than reading it. For the author, it might have felt like the last cry happened multiple weeks ago when it was last chapter for the readers. I have had this exact same issue while writing, I get that. But for Elzay, I think the problems wouldn't simply be solved by taking away, say, half the scenes where she cries. Mostly because that's the most emotion or personality she ever shows. I wouldn't mind a female lead being obsessed with Aseph and crying easily if she had any other hobbies or thoughts outside of that. Elzay just doesn't. She isn't even allowed to have any developed relationships outside of Aseph. Even her sister and father are relegated to footnotes in her life. She doesn't seem to have a single friend, and her mate, who was like a sister to her, only shows up when needed. I know this is based on time restraints and that the story has to focus, but I felt very little attachment from her side toward anyone who isn't Aseph. Worse, Elzay displays very few emotions outside of her grief, which can feel almost oppressive after some time. We see glimpses of her more playful side whenever she scolds her sister, but other than that, she might as well be replaced with a pretty vase, one that happens to leak tears constantly. In this story, she takes action very rarely. There are only about 4 scenes where I feel like she added to the situation instead of just replying. That is when she goes to Aseph in the middle of the night to stop him from murdering people, even though she immediately returns to acting coy in the morning, when she grabs his dagger and throws it away after he, threatened to hurt himself, when she assured him she loves him after he found out about her reincarnations, and when she risks her life to protect him, even though most of these were technically responses to what Aseph was doing. I'd also like to say that I liked her in the scenes where she sincerely grieves for Aseph's childhood trauma after she saw his scars. She mostly just cried there, but I actually understood her thoughts in that scene and felt like it made sense. Outside of that, I can't remember her ever doing anything worth mentioning. She keeps being dragged around by Aseph most of the time, which would be okay if she wasn't so helpless about it. Having simple characters is fine, but I felt like Elzay was especially flat. There were numerous scenes where she really could have had a proper argument with Aseph or criticized him. After the ball, when he publicly cornered her, when he scolded her for dreaming about him, and whenever she saw him verbally abuse Elmore. The last point especially frustrated me. I know you like this guy, but you watch him take an injured man's jacket to keep you warm? Really? She made one comment about not being fond of that, but she took the jacket and didn't ever tell Aseph to quit being a moron. She also sucks at communicating, like even worse than the average female lead already does. Elzay knows that Aseph is desperate for affection, and then she gets close to him and immediately plans to leave him. I know that she felt pressured by that seal, but still. If she believed romantic love to be impossible, she could have at least become a close friend to him, no? Or just avoided him entirely. Instead of deciding, Elzay remains wishy-washy. She says it's because she can't say no to Aseph, but it does make her feel pretty indecisive on top of having her already be a crybaby. I don't think this mixes well for the reader's perception, but in the very least Elzay did one thing quite well. That was that I never doubted her affection for Aseph. He was on her mind 24/7, and it was very believable that she would not be able to live without him, should he come to harm. Once she stops avoiding him, she becomes a supportive partner who always assures Aseph of the love she feels for him. This is exactly what Aseph needs. a less opinionated person who remains a constant calm but loving presence by his side. That's why I would say that no matter how weak of a character Elzay might be at times, I feel like she was a fitting female lead for this male lead. I just wish she had a tiny bit more agency. It doesn't even have to be a whole lot. Just a few scenes would have been enough. Maybe she could have had a hobby outside of Aseph, 1 or 2 conversations with her sister without bringing up her lover instantly, but then again the story was rather short and compressed. I did feel like Elzay remained consistent once she and Aseph had gotten together. The second season managed to go without any romantic rivals, or almost breakups, so I'm happy about that. Mentioning the second season, moving on to the next point. I am happy to report that this story did not take a nosedive near the ending, neither in art quality nor in storytelling. It felt like all the storylines were fully revealed, and while we could have gotten a few side chapters, all questions were answered. The limited cast really worked well for this work, especially because it chose to go directly from point A to B to C without any subplots. The most we ever diverged were fluffy scenes between our couple that weren't necessary, but most went somewhere and also developed the romance further. I truly appreciate that we had no secondary love interest or rival drama throughout the series. I was a little worried about the Seul and when Alceste appeared, but luckily the story didn't go down that path. I feel like that would have cheapened the impact. Maybe I'm just a little romantic, but I don't believe you can be fated to be with someone else when you love someone as much as Elzay loves Aseph. So really it makes sense for him to be hers after all. Acknowledging all of this, the story of this work is rather simple. Even if it does mix and match a lot of tropes, that is not a problem in itself. Simple stories can be captivating if the characters carry it, and I feel like Season 1 was a great example here. Aside from many smaller scenes, I personally favored it over Season 2. In total, this story features 4 storylines / central conflicts. Number 1 would be the romance. This includes the bits of Elzay and Aseph finally getting closer, falling in love, and the tension about his missing Seul. Number 2 is the reincarnation plotline, about Elzay's multiple lives that intertwined with the first one. Number 3 is the Seul Hunter, which is heavily connected to number 4 with the political struggles against the Emperor, who ends up connecting to Aseph's childhood too. Of these, I believe number 1 and 2 are the strongest storylines. Given that Aseph and his feelings for Elzay are the most compelling aspects, it was nice to see them shine in Season 1. Season 2 focused on the last 2 storylines. It moved away from our main couple because their biggest hurdle was already half dealt with. However, I feel like neither Zetson nor the Emperor were super captivating in their roles. The fact that they were essentially working together and then defeated with little preparation also strengthened that impression. However, the biggest problem this poses is that these arcs sideline one of our main characters. In most of Season 2, Elzay has no connection to any conflict going on. Her presence doesn't add anything but to be a loving partner for Aseph and a weak spot for Zetson to target. Both Aseph and Alceste get to plot, prepare and do things, even with Duke Tiaza, but Elzay mostly just hangs around and is depressed a little more. The same goes for Alyssa. I find it quite frustrating, given that the 2 central women are allowed little to no impact on this main plotline. Even worse, there's no development for Elzay inside at all. In Season 1 she at least moved from avoiding Aseph to liking him, but here she remains exactly as she was. We get this whole reincarnation plot, but somehow Elzay manages to seem passive in that one too. I'm aware that she is carrying a big emotional load, but all the frustrations from Season 1 were amplified by 100 here. Elzay does not really rein Aseph in when he is rude to Elmore, doesn't admonish him for being mad about a stupid dream she had, doesn't help with any political plots, doesn't learn any important facts that could help them. The only thing she does well in this arc is giving Aseph that pep talk after he convinced himself his presence is hurting her. And well, when she tries to protect Aseph, but it also offers another frustration. I understand the desperate desire to protect your partner with your life. A lot of people would do that. But after not having done many helpful things recently, I just got a little fed up with Elzay's aimless attempt to rush into a magic fight, despite having no ability to defend herself. What did she think would happen? Zetson already loudly announced that he would kill her in front of Aseph, and she gave him a prime opportunity. If the goddess hadn't magically intervened, Aseph would be no more. These grievances only underline my previous impression. The story should have followed Aseph. A lot of chapters already did, and we actually got to see him do something against their enemies there. His emotional involvement is also the most interesting part. For example, Aseph's realization that Elzay died for him numerous times already, or that he received a seal after all. Even more important, the Emperor's storyline was directly connected to his parents' demise. It was a satisfying ending when he managed to move on after finding the truth, and it was super interesting to loop back around to the start. Especially because the Emperor's situation mirrors Aseph's home life a bit, with him being an abusive father who ended up hurting his wife. I would have liked a slightly deeper look into that, but I am fine with the backstory given. I just feel like Aseph was allowed so much more action in this season, and yet we don't actually get his emotional insight on a lot of things. It would certainly have been more interesting than seeing Elzay be sad again for numerous chapters. Though there is one character that is worse than Elzay by far. I could not end this video without complaining about this. What would any manhwa be without having a useless, no, treacherous god? A Bandit Empress had it, this one has it. Premessa is the goddess of love. While not much about her personality or ethics is known, we are told that she loves Elzay. We are not sure why, but that is a fact. Then why did this goddess go out of her way to separate her from Aseph? Why specifically hide his seal until he almost dies, probably traumatizing both him and his lover in the process? This guy has been through so much. Elzay too, if you count all the lifetimes she fought for Aseph and lost him. And yet, this goddess seems obsessed with causing even more problems. She let Elzay believe she was fated to love someone else. Why? Because she wanted Aseph to redeem himself for making a deal with a demon? Possibly. But I find that a little mean-spirited when we are told that people who lose their seal or their fated partner go insane from feeling so empty. It is likely that Aseph felt that during the first timeline, back when he didn't even know about his partner but had lost Elzay. Would it not have been better to send them back in time together, while giving Elzay a small guide on how to help him? Why cause drama just so that Aseph will have to suffer a little more for her entertainment? I don't know. If anyone understands why the goddess did this, please elaborate. Because she does not seem especially loving to me. Especially after letting Aseph go through all that. We don't know how powerful gods are in this universe, but you could seriously not let that child catch a break. Aside from Premessa, few side characters stood out. Elmore and Shea were probably the funniest, even though I mostly felt bad for Elmore whenever Aseph was being rude to him again. I found myself liking Alceste too, even when he wasn't given much time to reveal how his past affected him. His scenes with Alyssa were cute, and while I found her annoying once in a while, I did like the characterization of her being more childish than her sister. I can't help but notice that Alceste did not look as beefy in the novel as he did in this timeline though. I want to know what they fed this man. The antagonists were pretty one-dimensional. Ludwig was the stereotypical jealous brother, and the Emperor was the selfish tyrant. Zekilion was a sadistic demon, who is just sadistic because. I did not mind the two storylines converging here. I just wish that we had gotten a bit more insight into Zekilion's backstory, or why the Emperor is working with someone who's literally killing his people. But then again, that guy is clearly insane, so yeah. Gonna be honest, I don't think I could say as much about this one as I may have about other stories before. Maybe because I have nothing I absolutely abhor about this story. It's easy to talk about drama, controversy, abuse of characters, and psychopaths for a while, but for this one I liked many aspects and was just lukewarm on others. Would I recommend a villain savior? Hell yeah. I think Aseph more than makes up for all the weaknesses the story might have. If you are into morally grey male leads, and those who have realistic trauma, he is your man. It's really easy to feel bad for him, even to the point where you are willing to maybe overlook some of the things he messed up. Except for that thing with the horse maybe. That was something. So unless cryberry heroines are your absolute worst nightmare, or you love horses, I feel like you will enjoy the story. It managed to offer a really compelling male lead, and even if I do admit the romance went a little quick, it made sense. They were fated partners after all. Aseph is one of my favorite male leads to this very day. He simply stands out. You'd never confuse him with anyone else, which is more than what I can say for some cold dukes of the north. So, to anyone who's read the story or just heard about it for the first time, please tell me what you thought about it. Whether you're connected to Aseph or just want to send him to therapy. Whether the female lead bothered you or if she's actually one of your favorites. If you can look past all the sound effects too. Those will haunt me in my sleep. Anyway, that's all I have to say, so I'm going to log off for now. I have a small hint for my next video right here. Until then. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye! Why are there so many? SFX. Who needs that many? Why are you telling me Elzay is crying? I can see that!